The story starts as our main character, Takuma Kuze, crosses the street while yawning. Just then, a car speeds up and slams into him. He collapses onto the pavement as people start gathering around, murmuring about how terrible it is that someone got hit on Christmas of all days. Lying there, Takuma realizes the gravity of his situation. He's 25, single, and works for a small company where he's been pulling endless shifts. His mind races with regrets. His parents never got to see him married, never mind having grandchildren. He still hasn't finished making that punicura costume for his little sister. Even though it's the end of the year, he worries about leaving his workplace short-staffed. A voice cuts through his thoughts, pointing out how he's been worrying about everyone else this entire time. Takuma looks up and finds a girl with sparkling eyes staring down at him. The sight shocks him completely. She warns him that moving around too much could be dangerous. Confused, Takuma glances down and discovers he's no longer on the street. Instead, he's floating in some kind of ethereal space, riding in a carriage. The girl grabs his hand and pulls him inside before he can fall off, relieved that he didn't tumble out. Takuma assumes this must be the afterlife, though it doesn't match anything he imagined. The girl corrects him immediately. This place is Alvaresia, a dreamlike world filled with magic, spirits, and dragons that don't exist back on Earth. She reveals her true identity. She's the god who created this entire world. After seeing his soul wandering, she decided to give him a second chance at life here. She then shows off her outfit, dressed in a Christmas-themed costume. She finds the holiday tradition so charming that she's considering incorporating it into Alvaresia. Takuma can't help but think this god is way too casual about everything, making his death feel completely insignificant. He tries to process what she's telling him about getting a second life. She explains that it would be wasteful to start completely from scratch, so he'll keep all his knowledge and strength from his previous life. The god presses him about his dreams and hopes for this new existence. Takuma hesitates, feeling like this reincarnation thing is happening way too suddenly. She brushes off his concerns, admitting she doesn't really care about his past life anyway. Her bluntness catches him off guard. She argues that focusing on the future makes more sense than dwelling on what's already gone, then compliments him on having a talent for reincarnation, whatever that means. Takuma's thoughts drift to the people he left behind. He hopes they'll all live long, healthy, and happy lives. The god grows impatient and keeps pushing him to share what he wants from this new world. He thinks it over and figures that since this is a fantasy world, he'd like to go on adventures, maybe partner with a dragon and wield both sword and magic. She gets excited and asks if he wants to go on adventures with a wonderful partner to celebrate Christmas with. Takuma wonders if she even listened to him properly. She suddenly declares that he needs a lover. He protests, insisting he doesn't really need one. She tells him to forget about his ex-girlfriend, the one he was about to propose to before everything went wrong. Takuma panics, demanding to know how she knows about that. Before he can get an answer, she moves her finger close to his face, announcing that she's just connected him with the perfect woman. He's completely baffled about why she'd do something like that without asking first. She casually mentions that polygamy is totally allowed in this world, so his new life will be full of romantic possibilities. Takuma realizes she hasn't listened to a single thing he's said. She admits it wouldn't be fun if she just followed his exact wishes. She wants him to travel through Alvaresia and find his fated partner, explaining that destiny has a special power she's thought carefully about. Without warning, she kisses him on the lips, leaving him completely stunned. She explains that this is how it works. When he kisses his fated partner, he'll know instantly through the destiny power. She asks if he felt anything just now with her kiss. Takuma nervously wonders what kind of god he's dealing with. She suddenly remembers something important she forgot to mention. Since humans from Earth would normally struggle to survive in Alvaresia, she's given him a special ability suited to his potential. Takuma starts to ask if this means he can use magic, but before he can finish, she reaches toward him and shoves him right out of the carriage. As he plummets through the air, he can't believe he's about to die again. His tie gets snagged on a broken branch during the fall, which slows him down slightly before he crashes to the ground. Takuma lies on the forest floor, dazed and aching. He forces himself to sit up and examine his surroundings. Trees and bushes surround him on all sides. He wonders if the vegetation somehow cushioned his fall. The realization hits him that the god is incredibly careless with people's lives. A low growl interrupts his thoughts. He spins around and sees a massive wolf-like monster with its mouth wide open. The creature lunges at him, and Takuma barely manages to throw himself sideways, rolling across the ground. He shouts in panic, realizing he's already in another life-or-death situation. The wolf opens its jaws, aiming for his arm. Takuma screams out to the god who sent him here. A girl suddenly appears, leaping through the air and delivering a powerful kick to the wolf's head. The beast crashes into the ground. She lands gracefully and immediately checks on Takuma, asking if he's hurt. He stares at her in disbelief. This girl just took down a massive monster with a single hit. Takuma thanks her profusely for saving his life. She smiles and brushes it off, saying he's exaggerating, but she's glad he's safe. Behind her, the wolf's body suddenly splits into neat pieces of meat. She examines the chunks and comments that they look like they'll taste good. Later, our boy manages to start a fire. The girl munches on the cooked wolf meat, noting that it's a bit chewy but definitely edible. Takuma reflects on the situation. Now that he's eaten something, he feels calmer. The scrape from his fall still stings, but he's lucky to be alive. He fell from the sky, got attacked by a wild beast, and the god told him to enjoy his second life. Yet all he feels right now is anxiety. If this girl hadn't shown up, he'd probably be dead already. He asks if she's from around here. She confirms that she is. He notices she looks strong, despite appearing to be around elementary school age. He wonders if there's a town nearby. She suddenly pauses, struggling with something. She admits she can't remember. Not her name, not where she's from. After a moment of intense concentration, her face lights up. She finally remembers her name is Mao. He introduces himself as Takuma Kuze and tells her she can call him Taku. Mao decides she'll use that nickname. He thinks to himself that she doesn't really act like someone with amnesia. She asks why he's wandering around in the forest, pointing out that he doesn't look like a traveler or adventurer. Takuma explains that he just sort of found himself here, and his past memories are a little fuzzy too. Mao observes that he also has amnesia, so they're both in trouble. He knows there's no way he can tell her he's actually from another world. He mutters to himself about how he's supposed to find his fated partner in this situation. Mao overhears him and perks up immediately. She asks excitedly if he has a fated partner chosen by the gods, wanting to know what kind of person they are. Takuma quickly covers his mouth, realizing he said that out loud. He admits he has no idea what his fated partner is like. Mao finds this confusing, that how will he know who they are if he doesn't know anything about them? Her eyes sparkle with curiosity. Takuma grows nervous as he explains the kissing mechanism the god told him about. Mao finds it incredibly romantic, kissing someone to reveal your fated partner. She notices Takuma isn't sharing her enthusiasm. He admits his heart is racing, but in a sexual harassment kind of sense rather than a romantic one. Mao presses him about whether he's excited to meet his fated partner, wondering what kind of person they'll turn out to be. Takuma responds that he's more worried about basic survival at this point. She brings up the importance of his future. They're both lost in this forest after all. She suggests that self-improvement is key. To meet his partner, he needs to become stronger, cooler, and richer. Takuma admits that might be true, but it stings a little. He clarifies that he's talking about food, shelter, and just staying alive. A scream suddenly pierces through the trees. Mao identifies it immediately and runs toward the source, with Takuma following close behind. They reach a clearing where a giant dark wolf is attacking a girl. The victim cries out for help, claiming a dark wolf ambushed her. Takuma recognizes it as the same type of beast from earlier. Mao immediately rushes forward, declaring she'll save the girl. As Mao charges ahead, our dude notices something feels off. Despite how much the wolf has supposedly been attacking, the girl's clothes are perfectly clean, and the surrounding area shows no signs of a real struggle. He tries to point this out to Mao, but before he can finish, the girl transforms. Her innocent appearance melts away, revealing another beast underneath. The creature lunges straight for Mao. Takuma yells at Mao to stay back. His mind races. He needs to distract the creature somehow. He grabs a rock and hurls it at the beast, desperately hoping his plan works. The creature barely glances at the small rock, dismissing it as hardly worth dodging. The rock suddenly catches fire mid-flight, accelerating rapidly. The creature's eyes widen in shock as the flaming projectile speeds directly into its open mouth. Takuma stares in disbelief. The rock actually hit its mark. Mao expresses surprise, realizing the damsel in distress wasn't human after all. The creature recovers and sneers at them for being mere humans. It releases a massive fireball aimed directly at Takuma, declaring he'll burn to ashes. The flames split into multiple smaller fireballs as they fly through the air. The creature warns that it won't miss next time. Takuma realizes that if this monster keeps throwing fire at them, they'll be toast. He shouts at Mao to run. Instead of fleeing, Mao raises her hand and conjures a huge fireball of her own. She wonders aloud what will happen if she does this to the creature's fire. Takuma sweats nervously as the creature panics, recognizing immense power radiating from Mao. It wonders if she might be a high-ranking demon. Mao cheerfully announces that bad kids deserve punishment. She releases her massive fireball, which tears through the forest and creates a path of destruction. She comments on how powerful the attack was, clearly pleased with herself. Takuma weakly points out that the creature might be dead. However, when they look ahead, the beast is still flying above them in the sky, barely hanging on. Mao observes that it's still alive. Takuma suggests they just leave it alone for now. She notices the creature drop something and wants to take it. Takuma comments on how fearless she is, asking if she's really okay after all that. She assures him she's fine. Takuma wonders if he can truly survive in this world. As they examine the bag the creature dropped, he notices Mao's back is on fire. He frantically tells her they need to put it out and asks if there's water nearby. Mao sniffs the air and picks up the scent of water in a certain direction, leading them toward a river. Takuma immediately runs and jumps into the cold water. Mao follows him in. They both surface, with Mao shivering from how cold the river is. She smiles despite the temperature, finding the experience refreshing. She takes off her shirt, declaring that this feels amazing. Takuma watches her energetic display from the riverbank. He picks up her discarded shirt and examines it, noticing the hole created by the fireball. He thinks to himself that if he had the right tools, he could fix this easily. The floating bag catches his attention, and he pulls it out of the water to check its contents. Mao emerges from the river and finds Takuma sitting against a tree, carefully stitching something. The bag lies open beside him. She approaches and asks what he's doing. Takuma explains he just finished repairing the burnt part of her clothes. Mao's face lights up with excitement. He hands the shirt back to her. She examines the repair work and notices he added frills to the design. Mao loves how cute it looks and asks if he really did this himself. Takuma feels happy seeing her so pleased. He explains that the bag he borrowed contained sewing tools and fabric, so he figured he'd fix the torn parts while he was at it. Mao runs her fingers over the fluffy texture, amazed at his skill. Takuma downplays it, explaining it's just a hobby. He enjoys hands-on work like this. He shows her that the bag also contains a map and other useful supplies they can take with them. He thinks to himself that this stuff was probably stolen from the person who attacked them earlier. The original owner might come back seeking revenge, so they should leave the forest as quickly as possible. Mao looks at the outfit again and remembers how earlier, when Takuma tried to save someone in danger, she responded by saying he needed to be stronger and cooler instead of thanking him. She apologizes sincerely for that harsh reaction. Takuma brushes it off, admitting it's true anyway. He does need to get stronger. Mao shakes her head and tells him she's made a decision. She's going to help him find his fated partner. While they search, she'll also discover all the wonderful things about him. When they finally meet his partner, she'll tell them everything great she's learned. To find someone, they need to go where people are, so they should head to a town. Takuma points out that Mao is also lost and dealing with amnesia. She waves off his concern cheerfully, saying she'll remember things eventually. More importantly, she's excited to meet his fated partner. She adds that he doesn't need to be so formal with her. He should just call her Mao. Takuma watches her enthusiasm and thinks to himself that Mao certainly is impressive. Finding her family and figuring out his own life can wait until they reach civilization. He suggests they use the map they found. Mao examines the pumpkin flowers nearby, observing which direction they're facing. She determines that if the flowers are pointing that way, then south must be in the opposite direction. Takuma notices the pumpkin has a face carved into it, an odd detail. Mao plucks one of the flowers and places it on Takuma's head, declaring that these flowers are cute and he should wear one. Takuma realizes the flower is actually moving on its own. Later, the town bustles with activity as Mao stands in the middle of the street, announcing loudly that everyone needs to pay attention. She wants to know if anyone recognizes this face, if anyone feels destined to be with Taku. Takuma stands beside her looking absolutely mortified, holding a sign around his neck that says he's looking for his fated partner. Mao scolds him for keeping his head down. Nobody can see his face properly if he doesn't lift it up. This entire embarrassing situation started just a few hours earlier. Mao had come running ahead, announcing triumphantly that she arrived first. Her enthusiasm overflows as she declares they finally made it to the city. She finds the place lovely and wonderful, turning to Takuma for confirmation. He stumbles along behind her, gasping for air and begging her to let him catch his breath for just a second. They spent so long lost in that forest, and the way Mao ran felt endless. The distance they covered to reach civilization exhausts him completely. Once he recovers enough to look around properly, Takuma notices people from different species walking through the streets. The reality of being in another world finally sinks in. Mao decides they should start searching for his fated partner right away. Before jumping into that, though, they need to figure out where exactly they are. Mao suddenly gets what she considers a brilliant idea. She produces a sign and hangs it around Takuma's neck, explaining her logic. If they walk around town with this message displayed, his fated partner will surely notice and approach them. Back in the present moment, Mao expresses confusion about why nobody is coming up to them. She wonders aloud if there's really no one in this entire town who feels destined for Takuma. He appreciates her enthusiasm, but desperately wants permission to take the embarrassing sign off. A girl approaches them at that moment, politely requesting they talk somewhere more private. Takuma's heart skips. A beautiful girl just appeared out of nowhere. Mao gets immediately excited, declaring that this must be the fated one. The girl then brings them to a large building and explains, this is the guild where she currently stays. Takuma glances around at the various people inside, thinking how many of them look exactly like game characters brought to life. The girl examines his clothing with fascination, commenting that she's never seen such finely woven, high-quality fabric before. The material is incredibly thin yet stretchy at the same time. She focuses particularly on his shirt. Mao watches her reaction with interest, noting how captivated she seems by the outfit. The girl immediately catches herself and apologizes for her rudeness. She introduces herself as Lishe of the Elf tribe, currently registered as an adventurer with this guild. She wants to know where Takuma acquired such equipment. Our main character introduces himself and explains he just met Mao in the forest recently. Mao jumps in cheerfully, confirming her name, while admitting neither of them remember anything except their names. They both lost their memories in some kind of accident. Takuma realizes how suspicious this sounds from an outside perspective. Lishe processes this information and concludes they genuinely don't know where their clothes came from. She tries to hide her disappointment about not learning more about the fabric. Mao picks up on Lishe's fascination with equipment and mentions they actually came to the city to find Takuma's fated partner. Takuma becomes extremely nervous hearing Mao announce this so openly. He tries to explain more carefully that before losing his memory, he felt like he was supposed to meet someone important. The details remain frustratingly fuzzy in his mind. Mao discovers a menu and gets distracted by pictures of food that look absolutely delicious. Lishe mentions the guild serves surprisingly good light meals, despite being primarily an adventurer hub. Mao points out an adorable-looking dish that costs 300 gem. Takuma realizes gem must be the local currency. He has to break it to Mao that they don't actually have any money. She responds matter-of-factly that they lack both money and memories. Lishe starts to understand this situation is more serious than she initially thought. Mao suddenly remembers something and digs into her pocket, pulling out some pretty stones. Takuma recalls these are the stones that dropped when they defeated that beast in the forest earlier. Mao suggests trading them for food. Lishe looks surprised and questions whether they truly don't know about magic stones. Mao admits she probably did know once but forgot everything properly. Takuma requests an explanation. Lishe clarifies that magic stones drop when someone defeats magical beasts. They have various uses, but people primarily exchange them as currency. The guild reception desk handles these transactions. She offers to guide them through the process. At the reception area, a man greets Lishe and notices she brought company today. She gets straight to the point, requesting he exchange these magic stones for currency. The receptionist teases her about being as straightforward as ever. Lishe introduces him as Rain, the guild receptionist, then explains these two lost their memories in an accident. Rain responds sympathetically, promising to teach them everything they need to know. He examines the stone Takuma hands over and identifies it as a B-rank magic stone. He explains the ranking system. Magic stones get classified based on the beast's species and size. While other shops will exchange magic stones too, beginners often get ripped off at those places. He doesn't recommend taking that risk. B-rank magic stones are relatively rare in this area. This particular stone provides enough value to cover several days' worth of expenses. Takuma and Mao light up with happiness hearing this news. Rain hands over a pouch of coins and adds with a wink that since Takuma is such a handsome guy, he added a little extra. Lishe immediately calls him out, pointing out he doesn't understand jokes and she worries about him. She changes the subject by bringing up Mao, explaining how they found this girl alone in the forest and need help locating her family. Rain mentions the guild maintains a bulletin board specifically for missing people. They should post information there. Alternatively, if Mao turns out to be an orphan, she could stay at the church. Takuma questions what the church is. Lishe recommends the inn where she's currently staying instead. She clarifies it's close to various shops, making it pretty convenient for their needs. Takuma realizes he needs to buy supplies anyway, so that arrangement works perfectly. Lishe offers to guide them there personally. Takuma accepts gratefully, genuinely happy to go anywhere with Lishe's help. The area Lishe brings them thrives with activity. Mao finds the atmosphere incredibly lively. Lishe points out a shop called Dwarf's Headaway up ahead. The name confuses Takuma slightly, but he follows her lead. Inside the shop, Takuma looks around in amazement at the sheer variety of items available. Lishe explains this place stocks lots of everyday goods and exploration tools. People can find branches in various locations throughout the region, which makes it quite convenient for travelers. Takuma observes that the interior feels much more spacious than the building's exterior suggested. Lishe attributes this to the blessing of mana. She catches herself and remembers they lost their memories, so naturally they wouldn't know about such things. Takuma latches onto this concept. Blessings of mana sound similar to magic. Before Lishe can elaborate, Mao spots something interesting and calls her over to look at a cute little bird-shaped object. She picks it up and presses it experimentally. The device generates a massive gust of wind along with considerable noise. Mao immediately apologizes for the disturbance. Lishe reassures her it's fine. That particular item is a tool designed for generating wind. She continues guiding them through the shop, showing them soap, water pouches, and various healing ointments. Takuma finds all of this genuinely helpful. Mao enthusiastically agrees they should buy these items. They complete their purchases and prepare to leave. Mao bounces along happily, declaring that shopping was fun. Takuma carries their bags and acknowledges what a huge help Lishe has been. She seems glad she could assist them. Takuma comments to Mao about how they bought so much stuff. They now have a whole bunch of items to carry around. Lishe looks puzzled and questions why they aren't storing everything in their bag. She points out that it's a magic bag capable of holding anything. These bags are extremely expensive and incredibly hard to come by. Takuma stares at the bag in shock and decides to test it. He finds he can easily fit huge items inside despite the bag's modest exterior size. He wonders aloud if this is also related to the blessing of mana. Lishe confirms that bags with storage blessings are exceptionally rare. She's always been curious about how they work. Takuma had no idea this was such an amazing item. He requests that Lishe teach him more about mana and other important concepts when she has time. She agrees readily, suggesting they talk more after getting something to eat. They head to a restaurant that's somewhat removed from the main street. Our boy notices strange, fluffy, glowing creatures and wonders what they are. Lishe explains she's been wanting to try this place for a while. Mao buzzes with excitement as they receive their food. Both Takuma and Mao find the dishes absolutely delicious. Lishe mentions this restaurant serves traditional meals from various regions around the world. She orders a dish from her homeland called elven herb porridge. Takuma tries it and finds the taste really healthy. Mao makes a face and declares it tastes like grass, offering her portion to Lishe. Lishe had warned them it might not suit everyone's palate. They finish their meal, and Takuma expresses how delicious everything was. He insists on paying for the meal. Lishe protests, wanting to pay for her own portion at least. Takuma points out she's been helping them tremendously all day. The least he can do is treat her to one meal. She tries to refuse, but Takuma remains firm about covering the cost. Lishe finally accepts his offer gratefully. A commotion outside interrupts their conversation. Lishe immediately rushes out to investigate. An elf woman is stumbling and appears about to collapse. She mumbles something about suddenly feeling weak. A man approaches and sprays something directly onto her nose. She shouts in alarm, demanding to know what he did. Another man appears with a sinister smile, commenting on how effective the paralysis grass works. He notes that elven women are beautiful and rare, which means they fetch extremely high prices on certain markets. The afflicted woman, Lishe, realizes they used illness as a trick. She thinks about how cowardly this approach is. If only she could move properly, these guys would pose no threat at all. The men move closer with obvious intentions, suggesting they have some fun before celebrating their catch. Before they can lay hands on her, Takuma bursts onto the scene and attacks one of them, throwing him backward. He rushes to Lishe's side and checks if she can stand. She trembles and apologizes. The paralysis caught her completely off guard. The thug Takuma attacked recovers and curses him. He draws his sword and threatens Takuma to leave the girl and disappear if he doesn't want to get hurt. Takuma's mind races. He needs to escape somehow, but how can he manage that while carrying Lishe? He remembers what the god mentioned earlier about giving him a special ability suited to his talents. He still doesn't understand exactly what his power is supposed to be. The thug advances with his sword raised, demanding to know what Takuma is mumbling about. Takuma realizes there's no time to think this through carefully. He needs to do something, anything. He reaches into his bag and grabs the wind generator tool they bought earlier. He knows it only produces a weak breeze normally, but maybe he can use it as a distraction. Takuma activates the device and releases the wind toward the attackers. Instead of a gentle breeze, an enormous gust of wind erupts from the tool. The force sends both men flying backward through the air. They crash to the ground at a considerable distance. Takuma stares at the device in disbelief. He just created such a powerful gust from a simple tool. Lishe makes a noise and Takuma immediately checks on her condition. She confirms she's okay. She grabs his hand and urges him to hold on to her. They need to get back to the main road where there's more people in safety. She apologizes for the trouble she caused. As Takuma holds her hand to help her move, Lishe suddenly experiences a vivid vision. In this flash, she sees herself without clothes, her hand held by Takuma in an intimate way. She blushes intensely from the unexpected image. Takuma notices her reaction and worries she might be hurt somewhere. Lishe quickly insists she's fine. She then realizes with surprise that the paralysis has completely worn off. Mao's voice calls out, sounding distressed. She explains how sad she felt coming out of the restaurant to find nobody there. Takuma apologizes for disappearing without warning. He was busy helping Lishe. Before anyone can say more, Takuma suddenly feels dizzy and collapses to the ground. Both girls react with immediate concern. Takuma then wakes up later lying on a bed. He groggily questions where he is. Movement comes from behind a curtain as both girls check on him. Lishe's face appears and she confirms he's awake. Mao expresses relief that he's safe, then accidentally yanks the curtain away in her excitement. This reveals Lishe is currently taking a bath. Takuma shouts an apology in complete embarrassment. He immediately pulls the curtain back, repeatedly apologizing for his intrusion. Lishe calls out from behind the curtain, checking if anything hurts. She offers to heal him right away. In her concern, she runs toward him, still completely naked. The curtain falls on top of Takuma's head. Lishe stumbles and falls directly onto him. Mao calls through the door from outside, checking if he's awake and noting it's already nighttime. Later, after everyone gets properly dressed, Lishe apologizes profusely for the commotion. She thanks him genuinely for helping her earlier. Takuma deflects, pointing out he's the one who passed out and caused her trouble. Lishe mentions she carried him all the way to the inn after he collapsed. Takuma feels guilty about that burden. She brushes off his concern, expressing relief that he's okay now. She notes how late it's gotten and suggests they discuss mana and other important topics tomorrow instead. Takuma agrees this makes sense and appreciates her continued help. Lishe offers that if there's anything else he wants to know, she'll explain everything she can. Takuma thinks to himself what a genuinely kind person she is. Lishe shifts the conversation slightly, bringing up the matter of finding his fated partner and wondering how he plans to approach that challenge. Takuma responds somewhat nervously that he'll figure something out on his own eventually. His thoughts turn to all the things he still needs to learn. How to properly live in this town, how to find people, and most importantly, understanding mana. The most critical skill he needs to develop is learning how to earn money consistently. Without income, survival will become increasingly difficult. Lishe suggests they head to the guild together the next morning. She promises to explain everything there in detail. Mao compliments her on being so knowledgeable and kind. Lishe modestly deflects the praise, explaining she only recently left her elven homeland. The people in this town showed her such kindness when she arrived. She simply wants to help others the same way she was helped. Both Takuma and Mao thank her warmly and wish her good night as they head to their room. Later that night, Takuma lies in bed reflecting on everything that's happened. He realizes he's just been going along with circumstances as they unfold. If he hadn't met Mao and Lishe, who knows what would have become of him by now. He traces through the chain of events. The accident, meeting the god, landing in the forest, encountering Mao, fighting monsters, finding the town, and now this. Mao approaches his bedside with her pillow, requesting to sleep next to him. Takuma agrees without hesitation. She settles beside him. He assumes she must be feeling lonely and thinking about her lost family. Mao murmurs sleepily that a lot happened today, but overall it was fun. She enthusiastically wonders aloud about the exciting things that are going to happen the next day. The morning after their arrival, Lishe takes our boy to the Adventurers Guild. She knows he needs guidance in this unfamiliar world. He had expressed curiosity about how things work here. The mana system, the way people earn their living, All of it remains mysterious to him. Lishe explains that completing guild requests offers the fastest path to making money. The guild operates branches throughout the world, which means work never runs dry. Takuma begins to grasp what being an adventurer actually entails, though doubt creeps in. He worries about his ability to handle requests involving magical beasts. Mao, standing beside him with her usual confidence, volunteers to deal with the stronger enemies. This reassurance helps, but Takuma still feels uncertain. At the reception desk, the staff member slides a registration form across the counter. Takuma picks up the pen and writes his name. Lishe confirms the process. Just like that, he becomes a registered adventurer. The simplicity surprises him. He had expected something more complicated, some test or lengthy procedure. Mao announces her intention to defeat magical beasts and earn money right away. The receptionist appreciates her enthusiasm but has to deliver disappointing news. New adventurers cannot take on beast extermination requests immediately. The guild operates on a ranking system that she had explained the previous day. Takuma recalls part of the explanation. The value of magical stones depends on the rank of the defeated beast. The receptionist confirms his memory and elaborates further. Just as magical beasts have ranks, adventurers do too. People can only accept requests matching their current rank. Both Takuma and Mao currently sit at the lowest level, F class. At this rank, they can only handle city cleanup tasks or material gathering jobs. Lishe clarifies the situation to Mao. Hunting magical beasts requires passing a rank-up examination and reaching at least E class. Takuma realizes that while becoming an adventurer proves easy, advancing in rank presents real challenges. He wonders about the process. A nearby adventurer overhears their conversation and moves closer. He leans toward Takuma and explains in a low voice, they simply need to defeat a few E-class magical beasts outside the city walls. The casual suggestion shocks Takuma. He stares at the stranger, processing this information. The man notices his reaction and realizes this must be Takuma's first subjugation test. Takuma confirms this nervously and questions who this person might be. Mao approaches the stranger with polite curiosity, asking for his identity. Lishe recognizes him immediately and introduces Liga, describing him as a very strong and accomplished adventurer. Liga offers his support, promising to help if anything goes wrong during their test. Both Takuma and Mao sense his genuine friendliness. His presence radiates warmth and approachability. Lishe shares that Liga helped her when she first arrived in town. His reputation for assisting newcomers apparently remains well known. After Liga departs, the receptionist recommends that Takuma proceed with ranking up. Takuma struggles to visualize what facing magical beasts actually involves. The receptionist pulls out a request form and shows him details about E-class beasts. She assures him these creatures are not particularly strong, yet the rewards exceed what F-class requests offer by a significant margin. Mao raises her hand eagerly, repeating her desire to fight magical beasts. Takuma feeds off her enthusiasm and agrees they should take the examination. The receptionist confirms she will prepare the necessary paperwork. Lishe mentions finding a request for herself as well. Across the room, several adventurers discuss a particular job posting. One points out that an investigation request pays far more than typical rates. The job involves exploring a nearby forest. Another adventurer comments that easy money sounds appealing, though a third person injects caution. This forest apparently appeared suddenly, materializing where nothing existed before. They should not drop their guard. The conversation catches Takuma's attention. He recognizes they are talking about the forest he and Mao emerged from. The phrase suddenly bothers him. Before he can think further, Lishe walks over to the group and takes the request paper from the board. She returns to Takuma's side. Our boy wonders if she knows those other adventurers. Lishe explains she does not, but going alone into unexplored territory carries too much risk. The group offered to accompany her. However, since she decided to accept the same request as Takuma and Mao, she turned down their offer. Mao expresses happiness that Lishe will join them. Takuma notices the male adventurers glaring at him from across the room. Their hostile looks make him uncomfortable. Lishe brings everyone back to practical matters. They still need to learn about mana manipulation, and more importantly, they need proper equipment. The receptionist grants permission for them to take whatever they need from the guild's storage room. Lishe expresses gratitude, and the three of them head toward the equipment area. Later, the storage room overwhelms Takuma with its selection. Weapons, armor, accessories, and supplies fill shelves and racks in every direction. Mao echoes his amazement, commenting on the abundance of equipment. Lishe explains how the system works. Experienced adventurers donate their still functional gear here for beginners to use. This tradition helps newcomers get started without significant initial investment. Lishe suddenly grows animated, her excitement visible as she begins selecting items. She instructs both of them to get properly equipped. Takuma notices the shift in her energy. She clearly enjoys this process. After browsing the available gear, Takuma finally looks like an actual adventurer, rather than someone who stumbled into this world by accident. Lishe explains her selection philosophy for him. Since Takuma lacks experience, mobility matters more than heavy protection. She chose light armor and mana-blessed items specifically for first-time adventurers. His equipment includes leather shoulder guards that do not restrict movement, boots enhanced with defensive properties and agility improvements, a short sword for close combat, and a practical travel bag. Takuma appreciates the thoughtfulness behind each choice. Everything feels comfortable and functional. Lishe turns her attention to Mao next. However, Mao has already found armor on her own. She presents herself wearing something heavy and bulky, asking for opinions. She admits the weight makes movement difficult. Lishe acknowledges the adorable appearance, but gently suggests finding mana-blessed gear instead. The heavy armor would only slow Mao down. Takuma scans the shelves and finds leather and cloth materials. He asks if these can serve their purpose. Lishe confirms they work, though raw materials alone provide minimal defense compared to processed armor. Something occurs to Takuma. He takes the materials and begins working with them, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. Within minutes, he creates a small bow and hands it to Mao. She loves it immediately, thanking him with genuine enthusiasm. Takuma downplays his creation, suggesting it offers better protection than nothing, while at least looking cute. Mao puts it on happily. Lishe watches this display with surprise. She asks if Takuma has training as a craftsman. He denies having any professional background, insisting this remains just a hobby. Lishe observes how intensely he concentrates when dealing with equipment, noting the skill in his work despite his modest claims. They then arrive at their destination outside the city walls. A creature hops across the clearing ahead of them. Lishe identifies it as an E-class magical beast, a rabbit hawk. Takuma finds its appearance endearing and feels conflicted about fighting something so cute. Lishe acknowledges the creature's deceptive appearance. Despite looking harmless, rabbit hawks steal cargo from travelers and destroy crops if left unchecked. They pose genuine problems for the local community. Our boy confirms the objective. They need to defeat it and retrieve the magic stone from its body. Lishe verifies this understanding and provides tactical information. The rabbit hawk possesses low attack power, minimal defense capabilities, and relatively little health. Landing a solid hit should end the fight quickly. Before anyone can plan further, Mao and Hum dart forward. Mao shouts for them to leave it to her. Takuma agrees to support her advance. From behind them, Lishe calls out an alarm. She had not expected Mao to engage in direct combat. The rabbit hawk notices Takuma and begins moving toward him instead of Mao. Mao intercepts the creature's path. Her presence seems to intimidate it despite her small size. She reassures Takuma, insisting the beast poses no real threat. Takuma, however, hesitates. He has never killed an animal before, and the reality of taking a life, even a magical beast's life, weighs on him. Lishe observes from a distance. She reflects on how appearances truly deceive. She never expected Mao to demonstrate more combat capability than Takuma. The realization surprises her as much as it likely surprises him. Lishe calls out to Takuma with a suggestion. Getting accustomed to direct combat might take time for him. Perhaps he should try ranged attacks instead. The recommendation makes sense, but Takuma immediately wonders if he can use magic at all. Lishe encourages him to attempt it. She explains that magic requires mana. Takuma's confusion prompts Lishe to provide a comprehensive explanation. Mana serves as the source of all magic in this world. It originates from mana trees scattered across the landscape. While mana itself remains invisible to the naked eye, it permeates the atmosphere everywhere. Takuma tries to grasp this concept, comparing it to air. Lishe confirms the analogy works well. Mana exists in varying amounts within all things. Rivers, plants, magical beasts, and even people themselves. Humans and animals consume the mana within their bodies to cast spells and perform magical feats. When someone imbues an object with mana, granting it special properties or effects, this process creates what people call a mana blessing. He begins understanding the system. Lishe provides everyday examples. Streetlights that illuminate without fire, heated water without flame. These conveniences all rely on magic and mana blessings. The energy source powers daily life throughout this civilization. Mao interrupts, eager to learn how to actually use magic. Lishe demonstrates the technique. She instructs them to feel the mana flowing within their bodies, much like sensing blood moving through veins. She raises her hand and focuses, gathering energy in her palm. A sphere of concentrated mana forms, glowing with stored power. Lishe explains the final step, releasing the gathered energy toward a target. She launches the sphere at the rabbit hawk. The magical projectile cuts cleanly through the creature, splitting it in two. The demonstration ends the beast's life instantly and provides a clear example of basic combat magic. Lishe clarifies that this represents fundamental technique. Her personal specialty involves wind magic, but the effects and attributes of magic vary dramatically depending on individual aptitude. Different people naturally excel at different types of magical expression. Mao immediately tries replicating what she saw. Energy gathers in her palm, just as Lishe described. Within moments, Mao successfully creates her own magical sphere. Her accomplishment impresses Lishe, who praises her natural talent for magic. Not everyone learns this quickly. He suddenly remembers something. He asks Mao about the fire magic she used before, back when they first arrived in this world. Mao confirms she thinks she can still do it. She raises one finger and concentrates. Instead of a small flame, an enormous circle of fire materializes above her hand. The heat radiates outward, and the sheer size of the conjured fire alarms Takuma. He quickly tells her to try making just a small fireball instead. What she created could burn down the entire forest. Mao adjusts her focus, and the massive fire circle shrinks into a more manageable sphere. She asks if this size works better. Lishe stares in shock at what just occurred. Mao possesses incredible magical talent, far beyond what most people ever achieve. Mao continues practicing, refining her control over fire. Takuma watches her progress and wonders if he too can learn magic. He deserves a chance to try. Closing his eyes, he concentrates on feeling the mana Lishe described. He attempts to sense it flowing inside him and focuses that energy into his palm. Mao leans closer, observing his attempt carefully. After several long moments, she asks if he has fallen asleep. Takuma insists he remains awake and concentrating. His body trembles slightly from the effort, but nothing happens. No magical sphere forms. No energy gathers visibly. Lishe offers an explanation. Humans typically possess lower mana reserves compared to other races and magical beings. This natural limitation means grasping the technique often proves harder for human practitioners. She offers to help by guiding his mana directly. The process requires physical contact. She reaches for his hand, asking permission to borrow it briefly. Takuma worries aloud that perhaps he simply lacks any mana at all. Lishe dismisses this possibility immediately. Everyone possesses mana, though the amounts vary significantly between individuals. However, maybe Takuma has an extremely, almost ridiculously, low amount of it. The thought depresses him. After testing further, Lishe confirms her suspicion. Takuma's mana reserves fall far below average levels. This means he likely has minimal talent for magic. Mao tries to cheer him up, offering encouragement despite the discouraging news. A voice interrupts their practice session. Someone calls out from behind them. Takuma turns and notices smoke rising from the forest in the distance. The dark plume suggests something serious has gone wrong. All three of them immediately start running toward the source. As they approach, Lishe announces her intention to investigate. She instructs Takuma and Mao to continue with their examination test. Mao refuses to stay behind, insisting she will come along too. Takuma agrees. They should hurry and see what has happened. They reach the forest edge and find chaos. Adventurers flee in every direction, their faces showing panic and fear. One shouts that this job was not supposed to be a simple exploration request. Lishe realizes with shock that no one warned her about an A-rank magical beast being in the area. A-rank creatures represent serious threats that require experienced teams to handle safely. The adventurers scatter, running for their lives. The beast responsible for the panic charges toward one fleeing adventurer, preparing to attack. Lishe reacts instantly. She raises her weapon. Takuma notices he has no idea where she even pulled that weapon from, as she was not carrying it visibly before. The weapon itself looks exceptionally well crafted. Lishe intercepts the beast's charge and strikes it with precise force. Her attack drives the creature back and saves the adventurer from being mauled. She immediately checks if the person suffered any injuries. The adventurer thanks her, clearly shaken but grateful. Another nearby adventurer stares at Lishe in awe. commenting on her incredible strength. Takuma processes what just happened. Lishe moved so fast, fought so effectively. Her combat abilities far exceed what he imagined. She turns to both Takuma and Mao, explaining they need healing supplies for the injured people scattered through the area. Takuma confirms he understands and will handle that task. One of the injured adventurers explains what transpired. Their group entered the forest to explore and map the area. Without warning, a giant rabbit creature attacked them. The group scattered in different directions, separated by panic and the need to survive. Some people remain missing in the forest. Lishe makes a quick decision. She will draw the magical beast's attention and keep it focused on her. This creates an opening for the civilians and less experienced adventurers to escape safely. Takuma reflects on the reality of this profession. Adventuring truly carries serious danger. People can die if they make mistakes or underestimate threats. The beast rushes toward Lishe again, preparing another attack. Takuma shouts a warning, but before the creature connects, Mao launches herself forward. She strikes the beast from the side, deflecting its charge and protecting Lishe. Mao asks if Lishe suffered any harm. Lishe recovers from the surprise and thanks Mao. The small girl announces her intention to help take down this creature. Lishe instructs Takuma to focus on treating the injured people. He agrees and moves toward the wounded adventurers. Even if he cannot contribute to the fight directly, he can still fulfill an important role by providing medical assistance. He carefully tends to the injured, doing what he can with limited supplies. Meanwhile, Lishe engages the beast directly. Her attacks land successfully, but the damage they inflict remains disappointingly small. She realizes her strength alone cannot defeat this creature quickly. The best strategy involves buying enough time for everyone to retreat safely. She calls Mao, suggesting they fall back and regroup. As Lishe turns to coordinate their withdrawal, Mao suddenly shouts her name. The beast has already launched its next attack, catching Lishe off guard. Mao reacts on pure instinct. She gathers her mana rapidly, forming a magical sphere with remarkable speed. She releases the concentrated energy toward the beast while screaming for it to get away from Lishe. The magic projectile flies toward its target. However, something goes wrong. As Lishe watches in horror, the beast deflects the magical attack. The sphere rebounds, changing direction. It flies back toward Mao instead of hitting the intended target. Takuma works with one of the injured adventurers when a massive explosion erupts behind him. The shockwave and sound leave him stunned. The injured person he was helping comments that they should be safe at this distance. She thanks him for the medical treatment. She mentions that other adventurers must have reached the guild by now. Reinforcements should arrive soon. Another adventurer announces from behind them that once reinforcements appear, they should direct them to the combat area immediately. The injured woman starts to respond but stops mid-sentence. Takuma abandons his current task and sprints toward where the explosion occurred. He calls out the girls' names frantically. When he reaches the site, Mao lies on the ground, unconscious and motionless. Lishe remains standing. To our boy, they appear equally overwhelmed. Our dude abandons everything else and sprints toward Mao. Her name tears from his throat as he reaches her collapsed form. He gathers her into his arms, his hands shaking uncontrollably. The trembling betrays how badly he has failed in his responsibility to protect her. Despite his self-recrimination, he knows he needs to focus on helping her right now, rather than drowning in guilt. He pulls out a healing potion, urging her not to push herself any further. The bottle reaches her lips and she manages to drink the liquid. As the potion takes effect, something strange happens. Mao senses an unusual energy flowing from Takuma himself, something she cannot quite identify but feels distinctly present. A sound catches Takuma's attention. He turns his head and horror floods through him again. Lishe has also collapsed, her body crumpling to the ground. Takuma curses under his breath and rushes toward her position. The beast, still very much a threat, prepares to attack the fallen adventurer. Takuma does not think. He simply moves. He throws himself between the beast and Lishe, his fist connecting with the creature's body. The impact surprises the beast enough to redirect its attention. Takuma shouts at it, deliberately drawing its focus entirely onto himself. He needs to lead it away from the two girls who can no longer defend themselves. The beast pivots toward him, and immediate regret washes over Takuma. Up close, the creature terrifies him far more than he anticipated. Fear threatens to paralyze his legs, but he forces himself to move. Getting distance between the beast and those two becomes his only priority right now. As Takuma runs, he notices something encouraging. The beast moves somewhat slowly despite its power. Perhaps its size works against it in dense forest terrain. If he keeps weaving through the trees, maintaining an unpredictable path, Maybe he can lose it entirely, and his hope shatters within seconds. The beast stops chasing directly and instead begins gathering mana. A magical circle forms in front of it, glowing with concentrated destructive energy. Panic seizes Takuma as he realizes what comes next. The beast releases the spell, and Takuma barely dodges the magical blast. His mind races through the implications. This creature defeated veteran adventurers with ease. Even experienced fighters could not handle it. He cannot afford a single mistake or moment of carelessness. Every second matters. He needs to lead it deeper into the forest, farther from the others, creating as much distance as possible. The terrain works against him. While running at full speed, Takuma's foot catches on something. A root, a rock, he cannot tell. His balance fails and he crashes to the ground hard. The impact knocks the wind from his lungs. He tries to rise, but his body refuses to cooperate. Strength drains from his limbs as though someone pulled a plug. The beast looms over him, having closed the distance during his fall. Takuma's vision begins fading at the edges. Sweat pours down his face despite the forest's cool air. Everything grows dim and distant. His final conscious thought focuses on the others. He desperately hopes everyone manages to escape safely while the beast remains distracted by him. Consciousness remains elusive for Takuma, but something extraordinary occurs during his collapse. A figure appears, the same goddess who sent him to this world. She cradles his unconscious form in one arm with surprising gentleness. Her other arm extends toward the threatening beast, and divine energy flows from her palm. The goddess apologizes softly, acknowledging that this situation stems from her actions and decisions. The magical energy she releases engulfs the massive creature entirely. In moments, the terrifying A-rank beast transforms. Where a deadly monster stood, now only a small, harmless stone remains. She picks up the magic stone and holds it carefully. She looks down at Takuma, still unconscious in her embrace. Her hand reaches toward his neck, checking his condition. Despite everything, she smiles, a sad, knowing expression. She expresses relief that he survived this encounter. However, her time in this realm has limits. She laments that her presence must end already, wishing she could have spoken with him more. The goddess leans closer, her face approaching his. She promises quietly that they will meet again eventually. The words carry certainty, as though she knows something about the future that remains hidden to everyone else. Liga, still positioned elsewhere in the forest, suddenly stops moving. Something fundamental has shifted. He recognizes immediately that the beast's oppressive presence has completely vanished from the area. The malevolent energy that saturated the forest moments ago simply ceases to exist. Other adventurers who fled earlier now cautiously return to the site. They call out, checking if everyone survived the encounter. The oppressive feeling truly has disappeared, confirming what Liga sensed. As they reach the clearing, they discover all three young adventurers, Takuma, Mao, and Lishe, lying unconscious on the ground. One adventurer spots something near them and stops in shock. The magic stone lying there could only have come from an A-rank beast. Someone defeated that creature, but who? None of these three seem capable of such a feat based on their ranks. Yet the evidence speaks for itself. The next day arrives, and the guild buzzes with news of yesterday's events. On the second-floor tavern area, Lishe raises a glass cheerfully. She congratulates both Takuma and Mao on passing their D-rank promotion. Despite her enthusiasm, both recipients sit with noticeably gloomy expressions. Mao voices her disappointment first. She failed to defeat the beast that threatened everyone. Takuma agrees with similar self-criticism. All he managed to accomplish was running away like a coward. Neither feels deserving of praise or promotion. Lishe tries to provide perspective. She reminds them that she also proved powerless against an A-rank magical beast. The mystery of who actually defeated the creature remains unsolved. However, thanks to Takuma's efforts in protecting the other adventurers and buying time for their escape, the guild decided to promote him to D rank as well. She points at Takuma specifically, encouraging him to take pride in his actions. Takuma reflects on her words internally. Dwelling on failure serves no productive purpose. He nearly died yesterday. If he wants to survive in this world, let alone find the person the goddess mentioned, he needs to become significantly stronger. The realization crystallizes into determination. Takuma announces his intention to get stronger, making it a firm commitment rather than a vague hope. Mao immediately echoes the sentiment, declaring she will become even more powerful than she already is. Takuma glances at her with mild disbelief. She already possesses considerable strength. The idea of her becoming even stronger seems almost frightening. Mao explains her reasoning clearly. She became an adventurer specifically to fight numerous magical beasts and grow through those battles. Once she saves enough money, she plans to help Takuma search for his fated person. Takuma adds that they also need to locate Mao's family eventually. This remains an important goal they cannot forget. Lishe picks up on something mentioned earlier. She questions whether the person Takuma seeks actually qualifies as his fated one. Mao confirms this innocently. The goddess specifically told Takuma about this person. Takuma quickly tries to quiet her, insisting the details remain fuzzy and uncertain. He does not want everyone making too big a deal about divine prophecies. Lishe's eyes widen with interest. If a divine prophecy exists, then they absolutely must find Takuma's fated partner. This becomes a matter of cosmic importance in her view. Takuma wonders internally whether divine revelations count as common occurrences in this world. Everyone seems to accept them so readily. Lishe offers another perspective. Perhaps the person Takuma seeks actually needs him as much as he needs to find them. The possibility had not occurred to Takuma before. He questions what she means. Someone needs him specifically? The goddess had implied something similar during their brief encounter. Mao decides to share another detail with Lishe. She explains that according to the goddess, people can recognize their fated person through a kiss. The statement lands like a bomb in the middle of their conversation. Takuma immediately flushes with embarrassment, his face burning. He tries to downplay the information, insisting Mao does not need to explain everything so thoroughly. Meanwhile, Lishe finds the concept romantic and lovely, her imagination clearly running with the idea. Mao continues innocently, suggesting that perhaps Lishe and Takuma should kiss too, just to check if they might be fated partners. The suggestion causes an immediate reaction. Lishe becomes extremely shy, her composure crumbling. Takuma notes her distress and points out that she clearly feels uncomfortable with this topic. Lishe admits nervously that she has never really discussed such matters before. The conversation ventures into territory completely unfamiliar to her. Mao apologizes quickly, realizing she suggested something weird. She did not mean to imply Lishe should kiss someone she barely knows or does not want to kiss. Our main character also apologizes for bringing up such a strange subject. The goddess suddenly dropped this information on him, and honestly, the whole situation messes with his head. He never asked for prophecies about fated partners and kisses. Lishe acknowledges that his confusion makes complete sense. Anyone would feel disoriented in his position. She suggests Takuma simply call her by her name. Formalities seem unnecessary given their circumstances. The conversation shifts as she reveals something important about her own situation. Lishe explains that she actually faces a similar situation to Takuma. She too searches for someone based on divine guidance. Mao perks up, curious whether Lishe also seeks a specific person. Lishe clarifies the details. A prophet from the Elven Kingdom received a divine revelation. The prophecy declared that a savior has appeared in this world, someone who came from another world entirely. This savior must be found and assisted in their mission. Lishe left her kingdom specifically to search for this prophesied individual. Takuma recognizes the parallels immediately. His situation and Lishe's search sound remarkably similar. However, one detail bothers him. If there exists a savior, that implies something disastrous threatens the world. He voices this concern cautiously. Lishe reacts with surprise. She questions whether Takuma truly forgot everything about this world's situation. Their world currently faces a threat from the Demon King. The enemy's forces grow stronger and more organized with each passing season. Our boy processes this information with growing unease. A savior, a demon king. This truly follows every isekai story pattern imaginable. However, the goddess never instructed him to save the world or fight any demon king. She only mentioned finding someone important. This savior probably refers to someone else entirely. Later, they relocate to a different area. Takuma comments on how peaceful and full of life this place seems. Lishe explains the geographical context. This region sits far from the Demon King's domain, which provides relative safety. However, recently his army's advances have become more noticeable even in distant territories. An underlying sense of unease permeates many communities now. Mao, with her characteristic directness, questions what kind of person this savior might be. Conflict seems bad, so understanding who will stop it matters. Takuma agrees this represents a good question worth exploring. Lishe shares what the legends describe. According to prophecy, the savior manifests as a young person possessing extraordinary talent, tremendous courage, and deep kindness. This individual should be handsome and strong-willed, someone who accomplishes great deeds that inspire others. Takuma immediately concludes that description absolutely does not match him in any way. He possesses none of those qualities. Lishe continues explaining that she could not gather any useful information in this town. Her search has stalled, leading her to consider moving to another location. Mao expresses concern about Lishe traveling alone. She might be strong, but the roads carry dangers that can overwhelm even skilled fighters. Traveling alone increases risks exponentially. Lishe admits that times when she struggled alone have taught her the value of companions. Perhaps she should hire someone to accompany her on this journey. Mao responds with immediate enthusiasm. She volunteers both herself and Takuma to join Lishe. Their journey also involves searching for people based on vague information, so traveling together makes practical sense. Mao promises to become even stronger during their travels, strong enough to protect everyone. She looks to Takuma for confirmation. He admits he does not mind joining, though he raises a concern. This search involves something incredibly important. Perhaps Lishe should consider asking veteran adventurers instead of relying on two relative beginners. Lishe expresses genuine relief at their offer. She confesses that leaving the kingdom alone made her feel uneasy and uncertain. Having companions would provide tremendous comfort and security. She asks them sincerely to take care of her during their travels. Mao promises that if Takuma ever gets into trouble, she will protect him. Takuma smiles slightly, pointing out that he does not intend to do anything reckless that would require such protection. Still, having Mao's strength nearby provides reassurance. Lishe reveals her planned destination, the royal capital. Mao's curiosity ignites immediately. She wonders aloud what kind of place the capital might be, what sights they will encounter there. Takuma suggests that with many people gathered in one location, searching for someone becomes easier. Population density should work in their favor. Just then, a girl interrupts their planning from nearby. She approaches their table and asks enthusiastically whether they head toward the royal capital. Then she requests permission to go along with their group for part of the journey. All three of them turn to look at the newcomer. None of them recognize her. Our guy asks her for her introduction, and she introduces herself as Noel, a dwarf who survived the recent expedition disaster. The memory clicks into place for Takuma. She was among the injured adventurers he helped. Noel expresses her gratitude with genuine emotion. She truly believed death had come for her during that chaos. However, the super healing potion Takuma gave her worked miracles, mending her injuries almost instantly and saving her life. Takuma feels confused by her description. He simply handed her a regular healing potion as far as he remembers. Noel leans closer, her face showing excitement rather than doubt. She insists the potion healed her deep wounds in seconds, displaying effects far beyond normal grade. According to her assessment, Takuma possesses some insane ability that enhances potions to resurrection-level quality. Mao interjects with a practical observation. Takuma cannot use magic at all because he lacks mana entirely. This makes Noel's theory about enhancement abilities impossible. Takuma agrees nervously, suggesting perhaps the shopkeeper accidentally gave him the wrong bottle. Mistakes happen in busy guild storage rooms. Noel dismisses this explanation immediately. Her expertise tells her the potion definitely came from Takuma's influence, not from any merchant stock. Takuma reacts with shock about her determining such things with certainty. Noel confirms her capability proudly. Her profession as a toolsmith named Noel provides her with specialized knowledge. She possesses genius-level crafting skills that even allow her to grant mana blessings to objects. This rare talent sets her apart from ordinary craftsmen. Lishe perks up at this revelation. Being both a craftsman and capable of bestowing blessings represents an incredible combination of skills. Few people possess such abilities. Noel accepts the praise with casual confidence, suggesting she might indeed qualify as amazing. To demonstrate her expertise, Noel pulls out one of her proudest inventions, a superhero tool she calls the Mana See-Through Kun. This device visualizes contained mana as a visible aura, allowing anyone to instantly assess a person's magical capability. She positions the instrument and peers through it at Takuma. Her expression shifts dramatically. All three companions watch nervously as Noel processes what she observes. Finally, she lowers the device and delivers her verdict. Takuma possesses not even a speck of mana. He qualifies as not a mage at all in any capacity. Her disappointment shows clearly. She had hoped to learn some incredible enhancement technique from him. The assessment prompts Noel to reconsider the entire situation. She questions aloud why this dull, sketchy old guy even travels on such an important journey. The detail about recognizing fated ones through kissing strikes her as totally sketchy and freaky. Takuma protests immediately. She does not need to insult him right to his face. Mao defends Takuma's character. Despite his appearance and weakness, he actually demonstrates real bravery and kindness in difficult situations. She pauses, then adds the qualifier about him being weak. Takuma notes that this particular addition felt unnecessary. Lishe supports this defense, reminding everyone that Takuma saved her when she faced overwhelming danger. Noel shifts her questioning toward more scandalous territory. She probes whether Takuma ever did anything inappropriate, peeking during baths or similar violations. The suggestion makes Lishe blush intensely. She calls Takuma the worst, though her tone lacks real conviction. Lishe quickly clarifies that any such incident occurred purely by accident, nothing intentional. Noel concedes one important point. Takuma did save her life, which carries significant weight regardless of his other shortcomings. He might not qualify as reliable in most situations, but she supposes she can manage traveling with him. Mao celebrates this decision enthusiastically. Having Noel join them will make the journey fun and lively. Despite her outward acceptance, Noel's thoughts remain troubled. She has genuinely never encountered a human with absolutely zero mana before. The phenomenon defies her understanding of how people function in this world. Time passes as the expanded group travels together. Lishe announces that the royal capital lies just ahead on this road. Their destination finally approaches after days of walking. Mao rides on Takuma's back rather than walking by herself. When Lishe confirms they should proceed, Mao declares her readiness from her elevated position. Noel observes this arrangement from behind with obvious confusion. She questions what exactly Takuma and Mao are doing. Lishe explains matter-of-factly that Takuma performs leg and back training while walking. The physical exercise serves a practical purpose beyond simply carrying Mao. A weak monster suddenly appears on the path ahead. Takuma reacts quickly despite carrying Mao, flinging the creature away with surprising efficiency. Mao praises his successful defense. Lishe even applauds the smooth execution. Noel watches this display with mixed feelings. He commits to the training regimen quite seriously. She turns to Lishe with a frank assessment. A 25-year-old guy with zero mana and novice adventurer status does not suggest much of a future. The observation carries harsh judgment. Takuma, walking close enough to overhear, points out that he can hear her criticism perfectly well. As they continue, Takuma comments on the decreasing number of buildings. They have gotten quite far from town now. Lishe confirms they have traveled a considerable distance from the last settlement. Their attention sharpens as movement appears ahead. People run toward them frantically. The runners shout questions. Are they the adventurers who accepted the guild's request? They gesture urgently in a specific direction. Takuma tries to clarify that they actually have not accepted any request. The desperate people ignore his protest and grab his hand, pulling the entire group toward their destination. The villagers lead them to a building where a young woman waits. A boy runs inside ahead of them, announcing to his sister that adventurers really came this time. The sister emerges looking skeptical, questioning whether her brother brought more random adventurers again, without confirming anything. Inside, after everyone settles, Lishe apologizes for the misunderstanding created by the children's enthusiasm. The sister explains they have been waiting extensively for adventurers who accepted their request to actually appear. Lishe gently probes whether something troublesome has occurred in the area. A kid climbs onto Takuma's back while declaring that despite being an adventurer, Takuma looks remarkably weak. Takuma protests that he is not that old, though he acknowledges looking the part. His attention wanders as he surveys the room. Numerous kids fill the space, and a pretty lady manages the chaos. The setup clearly functions as some kind of orphanage. Mao stares intently at the sister managing everything. The woman notices the scrutiny and grows confused. Takuma stops Mao before she can voice whatever thought occupies her mind. He whispers a question. Could Mao be wondering if this woman qualifies as Takuma's fated one? The sister explains their situation to Lishe. A magical beast recently took up residence in a cave near the orphanage property. The creature causes trouble for everyone in the vicinity. She submitted a subjugation request to the guild, but no adventurer responded to accept the job. Noel examines the request details and understands the lack of interest. The posting does not indicate urgent danger, and the offered reward barely covers basic expenses. Nobody wants to risk injury for minimal payment. The boy, Ara, adds emotional weight. His sister got hurt during their last encounter with the beast. While not seriously injured, she twisted her ankle trying to escape the creature's territory. Takuma leans toward Noel and whispers a question. Cannot healing potions fix such an injury easily? Noel realizes Takuma's memory loss extends to basic economic knowledge. She explains that healing potions cost significant money for normal people. Minor injuries typically heal naturally rather than wasting expensive resources on them. Takuma absorbs this information. His understanding of this world's economics remains seriously deficient. Mao breaks the contemplative moment with her characteristic directness. She announces they will take down the beast. They cannot simply abandon these people to deal with a dangerous creature alone. She looks to Takuma for confirmation that he agrees with helping. Takuma expected exactly this response from Mao. Her compassionate nature would never allow ignoring people in need. He favors helping as well despite the complications. Lishe adds her support to the decision. Noel, however, declares herself out. While she would like to help, adventuring cannot function as charity work. She needs to steel her heart against every sad story. Takuma immediately shifts tactics. He instructs everyone present to plead with the nice lady. All the children instantly cooperate, gathering around Noel with tearful expressions. They beg her help them. Multiple young voices create an overwhelming chorus of appeals. Noel protests that appealing to emotion constitutes dirty fighting and unfair tactics. Takuma acknowledges that adults employ shady methods when necessary, maintaining his innocent expression throughout. The combined pressure works. Noel caves and agrees to help, despite her earlier resistance. The children celebrate their victory enthusiastically. Behind the orphanage property, a cave entrance looms. The structure has been assessed at danger level D, making it manageable for their group, but still requiring caution. Noel examines the entrance carefully and comments on increasing mana density. The magical energy accumulates at an accelerating rate. This cave gradually transforms into a dungeon gradually. Lishe reacts with alarm and Noel explains the process. When a magical beast settles permanently in a cave, mana builds up continuously. Eventually, the location transforms into a proper dungeon, with all the associated dangers and complexities. Lishe recognizes how terrible this development could become for the orphanage. Mao simplifies the solution. They just need to defeat all the beasts inside the cave before the transformation completes. Takuma notes internally that Mao's approach involves brute forcing through problems rather than complicated strategies. Mao charges ahead enthusiastically, ready to begin the extermination. Noel runs after her, mentioning that sometimes people find rare magic ores in mana-rich caves. The potential for valuable materials motivates her participation beyond helping the orphanage. Both girls rush forward eagerly. Takuma shouts after them from behind, concerned about their safety. He questions Lishe about whether they will be safe with magical beasts and potential traps throughout the cave. Lishe reassures him that since the location has not fully transformed into a dungeon yet, the danger remains manageable. Her reassurance does little to calm Takuma's nerves. He runs after them, calling Mao's name urgently. Deeper in the cave, Mao encounters her first creature. A slime beast sits on the floor, its gelatinous body wobbling slightly. Mao picks it up without hesitation, commenting to Takuma about how cute it looks. The slime immediately attacks her face in response to being handled. Mao quickly drops it back down. Noel arrives and dismisses concerns about slimes. These weak magical beasts should allow them to clear the area quickly. While the magical stones from slimes have essentially no value, their body fluids serve as essential materials for tool making. She recommends gathering the fluids as they eliminate the creatures. Lishe demonstrates her technique, throwing her boomerang in a clean arc. She announces her intention to join the extermination actively. The weapon slices through slimes efficiently, cutting them in half one after another. Takuma finally feels comfortable attacking since slimes do not resemble animals. He can strike without the hesitation that plagued him when facing the rabbit hawk. His attacks land successfully, destroying several slimes. Noel places her hand on his shoulder suddenly. Takuma worries he did something wrong. She delivers her assessment bluntly. That weapon does not suit him at all. The mismatch between Takuma and his current weapon borders on gross in her professional opinion. She hands him a different weapon, instructing him to try this one instead. Takuma examines the new implementation. It looks somewhat like a bat or club. Before he can ask questions, Noel shouts a warning. A slime approaches from behind. She commands him to simply swing like he is smashing something. Takuma follows the instructions immediately. The weapon connects with the slime, destroying it efficiently. Success comes easily with this tool. The weapon feels light in his hands, easy to grip, and the swinging motion reminds him strongly of baseball. Everything about using it feels natural and comfortable. Noel explains her choice. This weapon specializes in bashing attacks specifically. It suits people who struggle with other combat styles. Additionally, the weapon carries a mana blessing that increases its attack power beyond what its appearance suggests. Even people who have difficulty killing creatures can use it effectively without psychological barriers. Takuma realizes she figured out his weakness, his reluctance to harm living things. Noel proposes a trade. She no longer uses that particular weapon, so perhaps they can exchange it for his share of the drop materials they collect. The arrangement strikes Takuma as very practical. Mao's voice echoes through the cave. She alerts Takuma that numerous slimes cluster in another area. He runs to support her, promising backup. Noel watches them go and plans to sneak into the deeper parts of the cave while they remain busy. However, Lishe's stare catches her before she can move. Noel becomes defensive immediately. She insists she would never try to sneak off and grab rare magic ore for herself without sharing. The protest comes too quickly and too specifically to be believable. Lishe's attention actually focuses on something else entirely. She praises Noel enthusiastically for figuring out Takuma's weakness and providing him with an appropriate weapon. The observation and quick solution demonstrate real skill. Lishe also expresses curiosity about the boomerang and club from earlier. What kinds of mana blessings do those items possess? Noel downplays her abilities, insisting she did not attach any particularly great mana blessings to those items. Lishe counters that bestowing mana blessings requires delicate, precise work regardless of the blessing's power level. Her eyes sparkle with genuine admiration for the craft. The praise makes Noel blush despite her attempts to maintain modesty. She mutters that maybe she qualifies as amazing after all. Lishe shifts topics. Curious about how to use slime body fluid in toolmaking, Noel responds with interest, beginning to explain the processes involved. The giant slime. Meanwhile, Mao informs Takuma that they've finished eliminating all the slimes in their current area. She suggests going deeper into the cave system. Takuma agrees, then calls out to Lishe and Noel that they should proceed further in together. As the words leave his mouth, Takuma notices something alarming overhead. A huge slime clings to the ceiling directly above both girls. He shouts for them to look up urgently. Noel wonders why the old man suddenly grows so excited, but as both women tilt their heads back, the massive slime drops. The creature falls onto them, its gelatinous mass engulfing both Lishe and Noel completely. Noel finds the sensation gross and disturbing as the slime covers her body. The beast qualifies as a C-rank joint slime. Multiple smaller slimes merged into one larger entity. It begins draining energy from those trapped within its body. Both Takuma and Mao rush toward the trapped women, calling out in concern. Noel shouts that the texture feels sticky and disgusting. She demands immediate help from her companions. Mao grabs Noel and tries pulling her free, but the slime's grip remains too strong. It has completely engulfed both victims. Takuma also attempts extraction, pulling at whatever parts he can reach. Noel's face finally emerges from the mass. She gasps that she thought death had found her again. Takuma checks on Lishe next, confirming whether she survived the attack unharmed. Lishe apologizes for causing worry. That slime felt incredibly disgusting covering her body. Mao suddenly alerts everyone to a new problem. Small pieces of slime they tore off the main body stick back together rapidly. The creature demonstrates remarkable persistence. Takuma realizes the giant slime consists of numerous smaller slimes merged together. Lishe confirms his understanding and explains the solution. If they defeat the leader slime controlling the collective, the smaller components will eventually scatter and disperse. They simply need to identify which individual slime leads the group. Takuma stares at the writhing mass. He cannot distinguish any individual slime from another within the collective. Everything looks identical to his untrained eyes. Mao raises her hands, beginning to gather magical energy. She volunteers to use wind magic to peel the slimes off both women forcibly. Noel shouts for her to wait. She pulls out her mana see-through kun device instead, suggesting they use this tool to find the leader. Takuma recognizes the instrument from their first meeting. Noel explains that the leader's aura should display larger and brighter than the others, making identification simple. She looks through the device carefully, scanning the slime collective. Her confidence evaporates quickly. She cannot distinguish anything useful. The slime auras overlap completely, creating an indecipherable mess. The tool proves useless for this application despite her earlier confidence. Mao suggests letting her try the device. Noelle protests that it would not work at all. If she cannot see anything with her expertise, a novice certainly cannot succeed. Takuma requests permission to attempt it anyway. Noel reluctantly hands over the mana see-through kun. And Takuma peers through the device and immediately understands what he observes. He announces success. He found the leader. His hand shoots forward with precision, reaching into the slime mass. His target happens to occupy the space near Lishe's underwear. His hand makes contact in that intimate area as he grabs the leader slime. Lishe reacts with shock to the unexpected touch. Takuma immediately apologizes for the inappropriate contact. However, the stone comes free in his hand. The leader slime dies and both women suddenly extract themselves from the collective as the smaller slimes lose cohesion. Noel celebrates finally escaping the disgusting mess. Lishe's thoughts remain fixated on where Takuma's hand went, the embarrassment still fresh. Mao instructs Takuma to help eliminate the remaining scattered slimes. He agrees readily. Before continuing, Takuma returns the see-through kun to Noel. He praises the device as amazing. It truly saved them in a critical moment. Noel accepts the tool back while agreeing somewhat distractedly. She looks through it again out of curiosity. Shock registers on her face. The mana visualization now appears incredibly clear and easy to interpret. Everything displays with perfect clarity. The difference from her earlier attempt defies explanation. She remembers the moment when Takuma borrowed the device and wonders intensely whether he somehow did something to enhance its function. Later, Lishe finishes up the cave subjugation and announces her intention to report everything to the guild. She needs to inform them that the mission is complete and request a proper danger level evaluation for the cave. Walking over to a penguin, she carefully attaches the letter to its feet. The sight of the little creature taking on such an important delivery task fills her with warmth. She expresses her admiration for the bird's dedication and reminds it to stay safe during the journey. Since most of the slimes in the cave have been eliminated, the path should remain relatively secure for now. The penguin takes flight, disappearing into the distance. Mao waves enthusiastically at the departing penguin, while Takuma stands frozen in disbelief. The reality that a penguin just flew away like some kind of messenger service leaves him visibly shaken. His face drains of color as he tries to process what he just witnessed. Lishe notices his pale complexion immediately and checks if he's feeling all right. Takuma attempts to brush it off, claiming exhaustion has simply caught up with him. Lishe suggests that staying the night would benefit everyone. She wants to properly thank him for all his help as well. Takuma tries to decline politely, insisting there's no need for such gratitude. Noel intervenes with her own reasoning, pointing out how happy this arrangement makes her. The journey to the royal capital stretches quite far, so taking breaks whenever possible makes practical sense. She adds a teasing comment about how troublesome it would be if an old man like him collapsed from overexertion along the way. Lishe agrees wholeheartedly with this assessment. Left with little choice against their combined persistence, Takuma accepts the offer to stay just one night. The children erupt in excitement over the prospect of a sleepover. Later, Noel observes the scene unfolding before her. Both Lishe and Takuma seem to fit naturally among the orphanage children, their interactions flowing with genuine warmth. She approaches Takuma, questioning why he's working instead of resting as everyone suggested. Takuma explains that ever since arriving, the frayed state of the children's clothes has bothered him considerably. He couldn't just ignore something so fixable. Lishe offers to patch the hole in his chest area as well, mentioning how that particular damage has annoyed her for quite some time. Takuma defends his torn clothing as a deliberate fashion choice, which Lishe clearly doesn't buy. She tells him to come see her once he finishes his current repairs. Takuma follows her instructions without fully understanding her intentions. When he arrives, she presents him with various tools and instructs him to grip them tightly. He complies, holding the tools as firmly as possible. Lishe activates her mana see-through technique to observe what happens, but nothing particularly notable changes in her magical vision. Takuma remains completely clueless about what she's attempting to investigate. Meanwhile, Mao strikes up a conversation with the sister running the orphanage. She asks directly whether the sister has someone special in her life. The sister responds that her affections naturally belong to the children she lives with, though she playfully mentions the possibility of having a husband somewhere. A slight blush colors her cheeks as she speaks. Mao leans over to Takuma and whispers that the sister doesn't actually have a husband, suggesting she could be his destined partner. Takuma immediately tells her to keep quiet about such things. As evening arrives, Lishe and Noel enjoy a relaxing bath while Takuma helps Mao get cleaned up outside. Mao comments happily about how wonderful a proper bath feels after going so long without one. From beyond the curtain separating the bathing areas, Takuma questions whether he's even supposed to be in this general vicinity. Noel reassures him through the curtain that everything is perfectly fine. Even if an old man tried something inappropriate, they're significantly stronger and could handle themselves easily. Takuma admits he can't argue with that logic. Lishe adds that he wouldn't do something like that anyway, which prompts Noel to suggest that Lishe should be a bit more suspicious of people in general. Takuma agrees that Lishe seems remarkably innocent for the harsh realities of their world. Noel explains that his straightforward nature and apparent lack of ulterior motives actually make him a strong candidate for becoming her future husband. This statement catches everyone off guard. Takuma's confusion mirrors that of both Mao and Lishe. Lishe parts the bath curtain slightly to peek out, explaining that finding a wonderful and capable husband ranks among her primary goals for this journey. Mao responds with admiration, impressed by such mature and adult-like thinking. Noel emerges closer to where Takuma sits, causing both of them to blush at the proximity. Takuma raises his hands defensively, completely flustered by the situation. Noel shifts the conversation to something more analytical, stating her belief that his ability functions as either an enchanter or an enhancer. Takuma asks what those terms mean exactly. Noel explains that an enchanter can semi-permanently imbue objects with mana blessings, while an enhancer temporarily boosts physical or item abilities. Lishe joins the discussion, questioning whether he truly possesses such abilities. Noel recalls specific evidence supporting her theory. When Takuma used the mana see-through technique, the accuracy of the glass shard dramatically improved. She also brings up the healing potion incident, which demonstrated effects far beyond normal parameters. Takuma wonders whether that outcome was also connected to some hidden ability. He immediately points out the obvious obstacles, though. He lacks money and can't use magic in any conventional sense. Noel practically screams that this is precisely her point. These abilities can't function without mana, and relying on magic stones for mana proves highly impractical in most situations. Her dramatic gestures emphasize how significant this discovery could be. Takuma processes this information and asks whether having magic stones would allow him to use magic after all. Noel confirms this, but stresses how inefficient such an approach would be. Despite the impracticality, Takuma expresses genuine excitement about trying magic, even if he could only produce something as small as a fireball the size of a lighthouse lamp. Noel continues theorizing aloud. Creating mana from nothing defies all known magical principles, so perhaps his ability operates under different conditions. Memory loss might play a role, or maybe specific activation requirements need to be met. Many factors remain uninvestigated. She holds up her finger dramatically and produces a star sticker, which leaves Takuma thoroughly confused. Lishe recognizes it as one of those point collection stickers from the general store. Noel confirms this, explaining that these particular stickers glow in response to mana. Mao gets excited and asks to try as well. Noel agrees and places a sticker on Mao's hand. Mao watches in delight as the sticker begins sparkling on her skin. Noel clarifies that whenever the sticker glows, it indicates that Takuma's ability has activated. Mao expresses hope that his sticker will glow too, and Takuma smiles at her encouragement. Noel suggests they continue observing his ability going forward to gather more data. The conversation circles back to the matter of marriage candidates. Noel reiterates that Takuma seems promising and easy to handle, which makes him worth considering as a potential husband. Takuma translates this concept into something more familiar, asking if she means like a boyfriend candidate. Noel brings up the fated partner test, reminding everyone that supposedly someone can determine their destined partner through kissing. Takuma questions how anyone would actually know the results of such a test. Without warning, Noel leans in and kisses him directly on the lips. The sudden action freezes Takuma in shock. A brilliant beam of light erupts around them, startling all three witnesses. Before anyone can process what just happened, a divine presence materializes in the room. The god addresses Takuma with exasperation, commenting on how he finally received his first kiss, and questioning why he kept a deity waiting so long. Both Noel and Lishe scream in shock at the appearance of an actual god. The god reveals that Noel is indeed Takuma's fated partner. Noel practically jumps on him in excitement, unable to contain her joy. The god cheerfully acknowledges the thread of fate binding the two of them together. Takuma demands to know what this thread of fate even means, while Noel raises her hands in prayer, asking the god to boost her rare drop rates and help the old man live a long life. The god laughs, declaring that Noel will make an excellent wife. Takuma's thoughts spin too rapidly to keep up with these developments. The god admits to growing frustrated with Takuma's passive approach to finding his fated partners. Out of sheer impatience, the deity secretly bestowed a blessing to speed things along. Takuma asks what kind of blessing could possibly help with that. God explains that this particular blessing increases the likelihood of contact with women. In his world, people would call it the lucky pervert blessing. The teasing tone in God's voice makes the nature of this gift abundantly clear. Both Lishe and Takuma suddenly recall the slime underwear incident from earlier, understanding now what forces were at work. God prepares to depart, instructing Takuma to move faster next time and stop being so hesitant about everything. Just before vanishing, the deity glances at Mao and gives her a playful wink. Mao stares back in confusion, not quite understanding the gesture. Once the divine presence fades completely, Mao checks on Takuma to make sure he's all right. Takuma notes that God really emphasized the difficult parts before disappearing, without elaborating further. Noel grabs him excitedly, shouting about how incredible receiving a god's blessing truly is. This development makes her claim on him absolutely worthwhile in her eyes. Takuma realizes that Lishe has been unusually quiet throughout all of this. He looks over to find her standing completely frozen, muttering disconnected words about kisses and gods. They ask if she's okay, but Lishe has clearly overheated from the overwhelming sequence of events. The next morning, the group prepares to leave the orphanage. Takuma and Mao wave goodbye to the children who gathered to see them off. As they walk away, something catches our guy's attention. He mentions aloud that Noel refused any rewards and left most of the collected magic stones with the orphanage. The generosity seems almost unbelievable to him. Noel explains that she only kept enough stones to cover their travel expenses. Everything else serves the children better than it would serve her. Takuma insists the gesture really wasn't necessary, but Noel points out that she'd be the only villain in this scenario if she acted otherwise. He already raised his reputation significantly by repairing all the children's worn clothing. Takuma smiles and mentions that Noel also set up protective barriers around the building, which earned her plenty of praise as well. Noel confirms that she buried protective stones at all four corners of the building. She needed to show off her skills somewhat, or she'd fall behind in comparison. Additionally, the thought of remaining cave monsters attacking the children would weigh on her conscience, so she really had no choice in the matter. Both Takuma and Mao recognize the kindness underlying her practical explanations. Lishe glances at Takuma, her cheeks flushing slightly before she quickly walks ahead of the group. Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps echoes from nearby. Multiple voices shout that the targets are over here. 4 guards rush into view, commanding the group to stop immediately. Takuma nervously wonders if they're the ones being addressed. Noel grabs onto Takuma protectively, identifying the newcomers as knights from the royal capital. The knights surround all 4 travelers completely, ordering them not to resist if they want to avoid harm. Confusion spreads through the group as the knights force them into a carriage and transport them directly to jail. Takuma shouts demands to know why they're being arrested. Noel screams back at Takuma, asking if he did something terrible in town that she doesn't know about. A cold voice cuts through their arguing, commenting on how ugly criminals look when they blame each other. An elf man steps forward, addressing them with pure contempt as vile kidnappers. His final words carry a chilling promise. They shouldn't expect to leave this place alive. The elf man's threat hangs heavy in the air as he makes his deadly intentions clear. These travelers won't be leaving this place alive, not after committing the unforgivable crime of abducting his sister. A fireball materializes in his palm, the flames crackling with barely contained fury. The sight sends waves of shock through the imprisoned group. Something clicks in his mind as he processes the word sister. A sudden realization hits him that Lishe isn't among them in this cell. He cautiously points out that they're traveling companions with Lishe, hoping this clarification might resolve the dangerous misunderstanding. The response comes swift and violent. The elf man hurls the fireball past Takuma's head, blasting a massive hole through the stone wall behind him. The captain demands that this stranger stop speaking his sister's name so casually as though they share any familiarity whatsoever. One of the subordinate knights rushes forward, desperately trying to calm the situation. The subordinate begs the captain to stop and regain control before someone gets killed. Their sins haven't even been confirmed yet, and executing potentially innocent people would create serious problems. The captain's breathing remains ragged as he insists that merely breathing the same air as his sister constitutes a grave offense. The subordinates exchange worried glances, recognizing that their captain has entered his protective rampage mode. Noel breaks down in tears, frantically denying any involvement in kidnapping. She doesn't want to die over false accusations. Her panic escalates as she starts rambling that she barely knows Takuma, and maybe he molested her, or maybe he didn't. Takuma quickly tries to silence her before she makes things worse. The captain's rage intensifies at the mention of molestation. He demands to know whether this stranger has laid inappropriate hands on his sister. Mao's innocent voice cuts through the tension as she questions what laying hands even means. The captain explains through gritted teeth that he's referring to touching his sister inappropriately. Both Takuma and Noel wonder in horror whether this man actually takes everything this literally. Mao cheerfully admits that she's touched Lishe quite a lot and starts crying in apology. One subordinate immediately intervenes, insisting the captain shouldn't take his anger out on a child. Another agrees that even for a night, this crosses acceptable lines. Mao continues her innocent confession, explaining how wonderful Lishe's chest felt, and how she couldn't help touching it. She recalls that specific moment fondly before adding that Takuma warned her about touching people without permission, so she only did it once. The captain's fury redirects slightly as he clarifies he's not angry with the child. He just needs to confirm one crucial detail: whether that man over there also touched his sister. Mao confirms that they touched her together, which prompts her to immediately approach Takuma and insist he should apologize too. The situation spirals completely out of control as Noel calls Mao over desperately. Our dude offers a genuine apology, but the damage has been done. The captain unleashes a massive surge of magical mana directly at Takuma, declaring him dead. Noel closes her eyes and bids farewell to their doomed companion. Just as the attack reaches its peak, a commotion erupts outside the cell. Lishe arrives with perfect timing, cheerfully greeting Takuma and the others as though nothing unusual is happening. The captain immediately addresses her respectfully, explaining that he was simply targeting the criminals as required. The prisoners desperately shout for her help, while the captain orders them to remain silent. Lishe's frustration becomes evident as she reminds everyone that she's explained multiple times already that these people are her traveling companions. The captain seems determined to ignore this inconvenient truth. Lishe apologizes to the group and informs them that she's obtained the king's permission to release them. She'll have the gate opened immediately. Relief washes over Takuma as he realizes they've been saved from execution. Lishe leads them through the palace, and Mao's excitement bubbles over at the sight of everything sparkling around them. The corridor stretches as wide as an entire room, leaving them in awe of the royal architecture. Lishe explains that the king has summoned Takuma and the others for an audience. Takuma wonders what reason the king could possibly have for wanting to meet them specifically. The captain's voice comes from behind them, acknowledging his failure. Allowing personal grudges to frighten innocent people brings disgrace to the knight's reputation. He formally introduces himself as Fornax, captain of the Second Knight Order serving the royal capital of Vanvale. He apologizes for getting overly heated when matters concern his sister. Mao observes how much he clearly loves Lishe, which makes her smile as she introduces herself. They shake hands, and Fornax tells her to just call him Forn, impressed that someone so small possesses such courage. Noel introduces herself next, mentioning her specialty in crafting tools and bestowing mana blessings, though she's still learning the proper techniques. As she looks at Fornax more closely, she finds herself thinking he's quite attractive. Fornax responds that this type of work sounds exactly like something his sister would appreciate. Takuma attempts his own introduction, but Fornax immediately cuts him off, declaring that he still hasn't forgiven this particular individual. Lishe calls her brother's name in exasperation. Mao jumps to Takuma's defense, explaining how both she and Takuma protected Lishe throughout their entire journey to the capital. They served as her bodyguards, ensuring her safety every step of the way. Fornax acknowledges his gratitude for protecting his sister, but maintains his suspicion toward Takuma specifically, glaring at him with obvious distrust. The subordinate knights apologize for their captain's behavior, explaining that he always acts this way regarding his sister. Another subordinate adds that despite everything, Fornax remains a decent captain, good-looking and highly ranked, though definitely carrying some concerning red flags. Our dude finds himself sympathizing somewhat, given that he also has a sister and understands the protective instinct. The captain guides them to another area, where a large round room awaits. Mao stares in amazement at the moving floor beneath her feet. She rushes to the window, marveling at the beautiful view spreading out below them. Lishe takes the opportunity to describe Vanvale, explaining that their royal capital thrives as a lush and peaceful land. She encourages them to take their time exploring the city properly. Takuma gazes at both the castle and the town below, overwhelmed by how incredible this place seems. The captain dismisses their wonder with mild condescension, suggesting they must come from some backwater area to be so impressed. Lishe scolds her brother again, while the subordinate knights begin gossiping nearby. One mentions that the first night order has been located. Another responds that there's no way the distant knights could hear their conversation from here. Takuma's thoughts linger on this mention of a first night order, wondering what significance they hold. His senses pick up on the arrival of another distinguished group of knights in the area. One subordinate comments on how the first night order has departed, while another mentions assuming that particular area remained safe. They then go to the throne where the king sits on the throne. His presence feels radiating power. The subordinate knights immediately kneel in proper respect. Takuma's thoughts race, knowing he absolutely cannot afford to mess up any royal protocol. Before he can fully process the situation, Mao enthusiastically greets the king, introducing herself as Mao, bodyguard to Lishe. Takuma screams internally and tries to stop her inappropriate casualness, but something unexpected happens. The king bursts into genuine laughter. He tells them to raise their heads, explaining that Lishe already told him about their journey. He expresses gratitude for their help. Takuma quickly offers proper thanks for the king's kind words. The king continues, explaining that Lishe feels like a daughter to him, which made him truly shocked when she received the divine prophecy requiring this journey. Both Takuma and Mao react with surprise to learning about this prophetic element. Tears well up in the king's eyes as he looks at Lishe, confessing how worried he remained until seeing her arrive safely. Relief floods through him now that she appears well. Lishe responds with affectionate exasperation, calling him a constant worrier and apologizing for causing concern. Her first journey proved so exciting that she ended up taking several detours along the way. The king finds her excitement over the adventure absolutely adorable. Fornax interrupts to point out that His Highness is being excessively doting. Takuma expresses confusion over why Lishe and the king share such closeness. Lishe explains that her mother and the king are friends, resulting in frequent visits to the capital during her childhood. The king adds nostalgically that when she was little, she used to declare her love for him. Fornax immediately calls this information seriously disgusting. The king notes that Fornax has always reacted this way. One subordinate respectfully reminds His Highness that they're straying from the topic at hand. The king refocuses the discussion, asking whether everyone present understands Lishe's mission. Takuma confirms that she left home to find and assist the savior. The king admits his worry when hearing she'd embarked on a divine mission, but relief came with her safe arrival. He then reveals that the savior has already reached the capital. Lishe reacts with shock to this news. The king explains that they unfortunately missed each other because the savior wanted to begin the Demon King's defeat immediately and departed for the next country without delay. The king had hoped their people could meet and honor the savior, but this person seems driven by an intense sense of duty that wouldn't allow for such delays. Lishe accepts this information with understanding. Fornax declares that from this point forward, the Second Night Order will take over her protection. They'll safely escort his sister to meet up with the savior. Takuma's thoughts turn melancholic as he realizes this means goodbye to Lishe already. Noel picks up on his sadness, thinking how unfortunate it feels to part ways so soon. The king continues speaking, pointing out that demon skirmishes have been increasing lately. The First Night Order was dispatched to a village near the border earlier, which means the Second Night Order needs to remain at the castle for defense. Therefore, Takuma and his companions will continue protecting Lishe on her journey. Fornax explodes in shock at this decision, demanding to know whether His Highness is serious. He objects strenuously to entrusting his sister to some stranger with no verified identity. The king calmly explains that this is exactly why they had someone reliable investigate Takuma quickly. Despite still not knowing his origins completely, the investigation revealed no suspicious behavior. Additionally, he successfully repelled an A-rank monster, which demonstrates considerable capability. The king believes Lishe should gain more experience by continuing her journey independently. He asks for her thoughts on the matter. Lishe responds with gratitude and acceptance. The king smiles, expressing happiness that she's found such great companions. He hopes she'll enjoy the rest of her journey. Fornax protests that the king is being far too soft in this matter. His sister possesses a naive, airheaded personality despite her elven heritage, combined with excessive kindness. He finds it miraculous that she's made it this far safely. He questions why the gods would choose someone like her for such an important mission. He remains convinced this man obviously harbors ulterior motives for staying close to his sister and voices his strong opposition to the arrangement. His subordinates watch with concern, asking whether he's all right as he pants heavily from his outburst. Lishe tries to calm him down while Noel privately wonders whether Fornax might actually have a point worth considering. One subordinate reminds the others that they should have witnessed the panic on their captain's face when news arrived about his sister's departure. Another adds that they literally had to physically restrain the captain from chasing after her immediately. The king balances both worry and excitement in his approach to these matters. Fornax continues his breathing exercises, trying to regain composure. He brings up another concerning detail. Mao mentioned that this man made indecent advances toward Lishe. Lishe responds with confusion, while Mao clarifies that she did mention the chest-touching incident. Embarrassment floods through Lishe as she insists that was purely accidental. Fornax moves closer, grabbing Takuma by the shirt. He declares that accident or not, the fact remains that physical contact occurred. He tells Takuma directly that he's unfit to travel with his sister. Therefore, Fornax challenges him to a duel. The winner will earn the right to accompany Lishe on her journey. Takuma stands frozen in disbelief at this sudden development. The subordinate knights immediately shout at Fornax to watch his mouth, reminding him that this goes against the king's decision. Fornax turns to address his highness directly, asking whether this challenge is acceptable. The king considers the situation, noting that once Fornax reaches this state, he won't budge from his position. Fornax complains that the king shows too much leniency toward these siblings. The king sees this as a good opportunity to evaluate what Takuma is truly capable of handling. He grants permission for the match. Takuma's shock intensifies at the king's approval. The king adds an important condition. The match will include a handicap. A fight between a knight captain and a rookie adventurer wouldn't be fair otherwise. Fornax readily agrees to this condition, thanking His Highness for allowing the duel. Takuma protests that a match like this is impossible, desperately looking to Lishe for support. She blushes as her thoughts conclude that if it's him, he'll probably be fine. Noel leans in close to Takuma, questioning whether he can really betray those puppy dog eyes Lishe is giving him. One subordinate comments on how rather lame it seems to accept a duel while knowing the handicap ensures victory. Fornax responds that he'll gladly throw away his pride for his sister's sake. Another subordinate declares that the answer makes their captain super lame. The scene opens at the Vanvale Castle training grounds, where Forn announces the terms of an unusual challenge. He declares that whoever wins this match will earn the right to travel with his sister, Lishe. The setup heavily favors Forn. Our guy only needs to make him drop his weapon, or force him to his knees to claim victory. Forn even encourages the use of dirty tactics, though he warns that such methods will only disgust his sister further. He accepts the challenge while the girls cheer him on with enthusiastic support. Lishe approaches him and apologizes for her brother's behavior. Noel casually mentions that she doesn't mind the match happening, but she's already convinced Takuma will lose spectacularly. She questions whether he's prepared for that outcome. Their companion points out that Noel's assessment, while accurate, comes across as unnecessarily harsh. Al cheerfully chimes in, noting that Forn has given Takuma significant handicaps, which might actually give him a fighting chance. Mao encourages Takuma to do his best, then teases him by suggesting that if he wins, Lishe might reward him with a kiss. This causes our boy to panic and beg Mao not to say such embarrassing things in front of Lishe. He then turns to Lishe with genuine concern, questioning whether she's comfortable with her travel partner being decided through combat. He wonders aloud if they're even the right people for such an important role. Lishe seems confused by his unexpected question. Takuma grips his weapon tightly and resolves that if he's going to participate in this match, he needs to give it everything he has. He considers adopting a defensive strategy, waiting to observe Forn's movements before making his move. A subordinate officially announces the start of the match. Forn immediately launches into an aggressive assault, his weapon clashing against Takuma's with tremendous force. Takuma barely manages to react in time, his mind registering just how incredibly fast his opponent moves. Forn acknowledges that Takuma's reflexes aren't terrible, then escalates the challenge by setting his weapon ablaze. He unleashes a torrent of fire directly at Takuma, who can barely comprehend what's happening. Despite the overwhelming attack, Forn casually mentions that he's still holding back considerably. He finds himself thinking that the flaming sword actually looks seriously cool, even as he struggles to defend himself. Forn raises his finger and conjures multiple fireballs, announcing that he's ramping things up. Takuma realizes with growing dread that he only has his simple club to protect himself. He raises the weapon desperately, attempting to shield himself from the barrage of flames. Mao watches from the sidelines, her worry for him intensifying with each attack. Our guy now trembles, his body and mind processing the reality of his situation. Despite being hit by numerous fireballs, he sustained barely any real injuries. This revelation makes him understand just how much Forn is restraining himself. Forn observes Takuma's weakened state and questions aloud why his sister would want to travel with someone so pathetically weak. He declares bluntly that Takuma cannot protect her. Noel comments from the sidelines that Takuma is clearly being toyed with right now. Lishe desperately calls out for Takuma to get back on his feet, while Mao shouts encouragement about counterattacking. Noel suggests, somewhat dismissively, that Takuma should just apologize and end this humiliating display. At that moment, Raiga appears beside the group. He calmly states that he believes Takuma still has a genuine chance at victory. All three girls turn to look at him in surprise. Raiga explains his assessment. Forn is heavily underestimating his opponent right now, but Takuma's eyes still burn with the determination to win. Lishe and Noel express their surprise at Raiga's sudden appearance, asking what coincidence brought him to the capital. Raiga responds that he noticed something interesting happening and felt drawn to observe. He finds it impressive that Takuma hasn't given up despite facing such an overwhelming disadvantage. Noel suggests that maybe Takuma simply doesn't comprehend the massive power gap between himself and Forn. Takuma thinks to himself, somewhat irritably, that he can actually hear everything they're saying about him. Mao shouts encouragement from the sidelines, urging Takuma to stand up and strike Forn with his club. She enthusiastically demands that he use any tactic available, even suggesting a kick attack. He responds that he'll do his best, though internally he acknowledges that he knew from the very beginning how this would play out. The match is hopelessly one-sided, even with all the handicaps stacked in his favor. Not long ago, he lived a completely ordinary life as a salaryman, making the situation feel surreal. His thoughts shift to Lishe, who has expressed her desire to travel a bit longer with Takuma and the others. She's made it clear that she hasn't forgotten her primary mission, to help the savior in their quest. She just needs a little more time before they meet up with this prophesied figure. The journey with everyone has brought her genuine joy, and she knows her wish is somewhat selfish, but she hopes her companions will understand. Mao immediately assures her that of course they're okay with continuing to travel together. Noel agrees warmly, calling Lishe a good girl. Takuma reflects on what traveling with the savior truly means. It involves defeating the demon lord, which is far from some leisurely adventure. Despite the danger ahead, he finds himself wanting to make Lishe's wish come true. Forn notices the subtle change in Takuma's expression, the shift from defeat to renewed determination. However, Forn raises his fire-covered sword once more, declaring that the situation hasn't actually changed at all. He launches another devastating attack toward Takuma. Our main character sees the flames coming and makes a split-second decision. Instead of defending or retreating, he charges directly forward into the inferno, shocking Forn completely. Takuma's mind races with his strategy. Thanks to the handicap rules, he can somehow push through the pain and flames. His plan is to close the distance and pin Forn down before he can react. Just as Takuma commits to this desperate maneuver, a loud noise erupts from somewhere behind him. Both combatants turn toward the sound, their match forgotten. A subordinate knight shouts in alarm, demanding to know what's happening. Another knight rushes forward with urgent news. A large group of magical beasts has broken through the northern outer wall and is now invading the castle grounds. The subordinate immediately begins coordinating the response, ordering the 2nd Knight Division to the scene and the 3rd Division to protect the castle town. As beasts pour through the breached wall, the knights announce that the match must be postponed immediately. Everyone rushes toward the emergency. Forn shouts commands as he runs, telling the civilians to stay back and let the knights handle the beasts. Takuma expresses concern about the townspeople's safety. Noel tries to reassure him that everything will be fine with the knights responding. Lishe points out the alarming fact that the beasts broke through the castle's magical protections. Noel explains that residential areas typically have mana-based barriers that repel beasts automatically, so those zones remain safe. However, higher-tier beasts and demons are less affected by such protections. She adds that lately there have been increasingly frequent sightings of stronger monsters in the area, which has become quite alarming. Mao positions herself by the wall overlooking the town and calls out to our boy, informing him that Forn is fighting the beast down there. Takuma climbs up to see for himself. Mao shouts a warning to be careful. Below them, Forn battles alongside other knights against multiple beasts. One creature has already been stopped and lies motionless. Another knight calls out to Forn for support. Forn responds by summoning the spirits of flame, commanding them to transform into arrows and pierce through his enemies. He conjures what he calls the Crimson Rain of Arrows, unleashing a devastating barrage that strikes the beasts and creates massive clouds of smoke. Takuma watches in awe, realizing that the fireballs he endured during their match were truly just Forn holding back his real power. Lishe comments that she doesn't believe Forn actually wanted to hurt Takuma during the match. She notes that he even gave her a healing potion afterward, suggesting he was just trying to keep Takuma in check rather than cause genuine harm. Mao suddenly turns to Takuma with urgency, telling him she hears someone screaming from a particular direction. Takuma admits he doesn't hear anything, but Mao insists that someone might be in trouble. Without waiting for further discussion, she scoops Takuma up in her arms and carries him off toward the sound. Noel and Lishe stand there, momentarily stunned by the sudden departure. Lishe quickly tells Noel to follow them. Meanwhile, a subordinate knight instructs Raiga to look after Lishe and the others. Raiga agrees, but when he turns around, both women have vanished. He wonders aloud where they could have gone so quickly. Mao and Takuma arrive at a scene of chaos. A massive snake-like beast is attacking a family of 3 who cry out desperately for help. Mao charges forward, literally picking up Takuma and throwing him directly at the snake's head. He crashes into the creature and falls to the ground, hard. Mao rushes to the family, asking if they're okay and checking for injuries. The family members thank them profusely for the intervention. Noel and Lishe arrive from above, shouting down that there really are monsters in this area and urging everyone to hurry. Mao kicks at the snake while Takuma works to evacuate the family into a nearby home for safety. As Takuma turns away from the building, the snake suddenly lunges toward him for another attack. Mao shouts his name in warning, but the massive creature is already upon him. Takuma desperately grabs hold of the snake's body, thinking that he somehow managed to block its charge. The snake then begins to gather energy, and a glowing lightning orb forms around it, crackling with dangerous power. Takuma's mind races. He questions whether he can even block lightning-based magic with just a wooden club. But he realizes that if he doesn't stop the attack, it will destroy the house behind him where the family has taken shelter. Just as the lightning is about to be released, Lishe positions herself in front of Takuma and conjures a magical shield to intercept the attack. Noel observes from behind them, praising the elven magic expert for creating an effective barrier. Takuma thanks everyone profusely, admitting that Lishe really saved him and that her magic is awesome. Lishe responds with relief, saying, "Thank goodness she somehow managed to pull it off." Our boy glances upward at the clouds gathering overhead and hears a distant cry for help. He's shocked by what he's sensing. Noel appears behind him and informs the group that she's sent up a signal flare calling for reinforcements. Just then, another massive lightning strike begins forming in the sky above them. Noel urgently tells Lishe to prepare another magical barrier. Lishe admits with some embarrassment that she's actually not very skilled at magic. She calls Mao over to join them, and Mao hurries to their position. Lishe summons the spirit of the wind, commanding it to transform into a shield and protect them all. She activates the wind barrier, raising both hands with intense focus and concentration. All of them stand together, bracing for impact, but Lishe warns that she's genuinely bad at magic and might not be able to hold it. The magical orb of lightning descends rapidly, almost reaching them. Lishe shouts that she'll try to channel it once more. Suddenly, an additional barrier materializes in front of the entire group, a shield of tremendous power that leaves Lishe shocked and confused. Takuma expresses amazement at what just happened. At that moment, Raiga arrives on the scene, having created the additional protective barrier. He asks if everyone is all right. Takuma gratefully acknowledges that Raiga saved them all. Raiga confirms that the beast they just fought appears to have been the last of the rampaging creatures. His eyes then fall upon something on the ground, a magic stone left behind by the defeated monster. From behind him, Forn comes running toward the group, his face flushed with anger. He demands to know how Takuma dared to put his sister in such terrible danger. After the immediate crisis passes, the family that Takuma and Mao rescued approaches them with gratitude. The family thanks them warmly while Mao playfully comments to their child that their ears are adorable. Forn arrives at that moment, and Lishe shows visible shock at seeing her brother. He confirms that he's safe and unharmed. Lishe then bows deeply before the family, apologizing sincerely for putting them all in danger due to her group's lack of strength. The family seems overwhelmed by her formal apology. Forn surprises everyone by thanking Takuma and the others for protecting the civilians. which leaves Takuma genuinely shocked by the unexpected gratitude. Takuma admits honestly that if Raiga hadn't shown up exactly when he did, they would have been in serious trouble. Noel suggests he shouldn't be so modest about their efforts. Their companion seems confused and asks if Noel knows Raiga. She explains that she sometimes watches the castle nights during their training sessions. Takuma realizes this means Raiga must be training at the castle. Raiga then praises Lishe's magical barrier, commenting that it seemed powerful enough to block most attacks and was genuinely impressive. Forn turns to his sister and remarks that he thought she was better at magic, expressing his desire to see her abilities. Lishe deflects the compliment, suggesting that maybe the barrier's power came from Takuma's influence rather than her own skill. Takuma reacts with shock, insisting that it was definitely Lishe's magic at work, not his. Noel suddenly recalls something important. Now that Forn mentions it, she noticed that a seal might have lit up for a brief moment during the battle. She explains to the group that she hasn't had time to properly mention this, but Takuma is an enchanter who possesses absolutely zero mana. She asks Raiga what he thinks about this unusual situation. Raiga reacts with complete shock, questioning how someone with no mana can still use magic. Mao checks on Takuma, asking if he's tired or hurt. He reassures her that he's completely fine. Takuma then requests a private conversation with Raiga, and Raiga readily agrees. Meanwhile, in a different part of the castle, the king stands beside a pole with another man. The king discusses recent developments. A particular person has appeared in town, claiming to be searching for someone. This individual wandered around casually with no prior sightings or testimony from anyone who knew them beforehand. This mysterious person also spoke about some suspicious-sounding oracle while drinking at a tavern. The man beside the king responds that it's presumptuous for a common person to speak of oracles. He points out that the so-called savior from the other day differed from the legends in both ability and appearance. He dismisses the oracle talk as nothing more than tavern gossip, arguing that this cannot be the same prophesied person. However, he notes that what's truly interesting is that unknown girl's race, referring to Mao and the mystery surrounding her origins. The training session then begins with Mao demonstrating her incredible physical strength through push-ups, counting off each repetition with ease as she reaches 101, 102, and 103. Raiga watches with an amazed smile, commenting on her extraordinary capabilities, and half-jokingly wondering if she might actually be a demon. Mao cheerfully responds that she can continue for much longer without breaking a sweat. Meanwhile, Takuma struggles through his own set of push-ups, his entire body trembling with exhaustion. He questions how a simple request to learn how to become stronger somehow transformed into this brutal push-up routine. Raiga lays out the full training regimen: 200 push-ups, 200 sit-ups, and 100 practice swings every single day without exception. Takuma glances at his companions and points out that surely not everyone can actually complete this insane workout. The group casually confirms that they all manage to do it regularly. Takuma reacts with disbelief, feeling completely overwhelmed by their casual attitude towards such intense physical training. However, he admits to himself that he has learned some genuinely useful skills during this process, including proper weapon handling and how to fall safely without injuring himself. Mao demonstrates what she's learned by performing a graceful fall and recovery, proudly showing off her technique with an enthusiastic flourish. Raiga observes her somersault with amusement, noting that while it wasn't exactly what he meant by learning to fall properly, the cuteness factor makes it perfectly acceptable. He remarks that her motivation clearly runs high. Raiga then turns his attention back to Takuma, pointing out that humans typically stop developing physical strength around age 25, making it quite unusual to see significant strength gains at Takuma's current age. Our main character responds with a somewhat awkward laugh, explaining that right now he feels like he has nothing but untapped potential waiting to be developed. Raiga encourages this positive mindset enthusiastically. Takuma continues, mentioning that he seems to possess some kind of special ability, though he completely fails to understand how it actually works or what triggers it. Raiga recalls that Noel referred to him as a no-mana enchanter during their earlier conversation. Takuma confirms this classification but admits he remains honestly unaware of how his ability functions in practice. Sometimes the power activates spontaneously, while other times it refuses to work at all despite his efforts. Because of this unreliability, Takuma has concluded that training his physical body offers a more solid and dependable path toward gaining real strength. Mao eagerly volunteers to train alongside him and Raiga. Reiga expresses appreciation for Takuma's practical approach to self-improvement, finding it refreshing and sensible. Our boy then raises something that has been bothering him for a while. The Demon King supposedly threatens world peace, yet he notices no sense of urgency from Lishe or the people living in this country. He wonders whether they should be trying to catch up with the hero more quickly instead of taking their time with the journey. Mao continues practicing her weapon swings nearby, working toward her goal of 100 repetitions. Raiga provides context for Takuma's concerns, explaining that Lishe was raised in the Elf Kingdom, which maintains strict neutrality in the ongoing war between the Demon King's army and the allied forces. This particular region exists far from Demon King territory, making it genuinely difficult for residents to feel the threat directly in their daily lives. Additionally, the Demon King's army hasn't been launching reckless attacks everywhere, which further diminishes the sense of immediate danger. Raiga assures Takuma that continued traveling will eventually make the real danger feel much more tangible and present. He reflects internally on how his impression of the Demon King situation differs quite dramatically from what he originally expected based on stories and legends. Raiga claps his hands together and announces that they should continue their training session with another 100 practice swings. Takuma begs him to go easy, while Mao cheerfully announces that she's already finished her full set of 200 swings. The scene shifts to a bar elsewhere in the town, where several people gather and socialize. Nobles examine a list of potential candidates for some important position, discussing the qualifications of various individuals. One candidate stands out as the youngest vice captain ever appointed. Another holds the distinction of possessing the highest mana capacity in the kingdom, and a third has specialized extensively in magical text research. Several men in the bar notice an attractive woman and comment on her appearance among themselves. On another side of the establishment, Lishe drinks from her cup and exclaims how delicious the beverage tastes. Forn suddenly appears and questions in alarm whether she's actually drinking alcohol. Noel glances at Lishe and realizes that she mistakenly believed she was drinking juice when she ordered. Forn expresses concern about whether she'll be okay, but Noel dismisses his worries as excessive, calling him a worrywart. Lishe then requests some milk to drink instead. At that moment, Noel spots Takuma, Raiga, and Mao entering the bar together. Takuma thanks Raiga for all his hard work during the training session. Lishe approaches Takuma and hands him what she believes to be water, though it's actually alcohol. Takuma drinks it without realizing, lamenting that he couldn't even complete half of the required sit-ups, let alone reach the full 100 repetitions. Raiga reminds him that the most important aspect of training involves doing it every single day without fail, even if the numbers start small. Mao expresses her happiness about the secret training session, finding the whole experience genuinely fun rather than exhausting. Raiga provides an encouraging assessment. With more combat experience added to her natural abilities, Mao might actually become stronger than most regular knights in the kingdom. She responds with determination, confirming that she understands and will work toward that goal. Forn observes this exchange and comments that if Raiga speaks so highly of someone's potential, they must truly possess remarkable strength. He acknowledges his duty to protect the people of this country, then specifically asks Mao to look after both Noel and Lishe during their travels. Mao happily agrees, promising to leave everything to her. Forn then addresses our guy directly with a stern warning not to drag Lishe down during their journey together. The subordinate knights standing nearby react with complete shock at this statement. Their captain actually agreed to let his beloved sister travel with this relatively weak guy. Even their stone-faced king apparently approved of this arrangement. Forn snaps at his subordinates not to voice unnecessary observations, explaining that he only agreed to this arrangement because he has to deal with the extensive aftermath of the monster attack on the town. One subordinate whispers that Forn even wrote out a detailed list of places his sister might enjoy visiting during her travels. Takuma overhears this and thinks to himself that Forn doesn't actually seem like a bad person at all. He clearly has courage and genuine care for his sister, which makes Takuma feel he can trust the knight captain at least a little bit. Lishe tugs on her brother's sleeve and asks what people typically express in situations like this. Forn takes a breath and formally states his apology for everything that has happened up until now, asking Takuma to please take proper care of his sister during their journey. Lishe praises him for handling this well, while Mao announces that she'll reward Forn with lots of praise too. Lishe's expression suddenly shifts to something sad and emotional. Forn notices this change and gently instructs her to head upstairs to her room and rest. Instead of complying, Lishe grabs onto Takuma's shirt and declares that she wants to go with him instead. The subordinate knights quickly grab hold of Forn to prevent him from interfering, urging their captain to head to his own room now while he still has the chance. Mao observes the situation and comments cheerfully that this looks like love developing between them. Our guy accepts the responsibility and escorts Lishe upstairs toward her room. She becomes increasingly emotional as they walk. Takuma mentions that he'll head back downstairs after getting her settled, and offers to fetch Noel to help her. Lishe suddenly announces that she wants to take a bath. Takuma responds that he'll go prepare a screen and heat up some water for her. Without warning, Lishe shouts for Takuma to undress her, declaring that she won't back down on this demand. Takuma reacts with extreme nervousness, insisting that he should wait and get Noel to help instead. Lishe calls out for him to wait and stumbles forward unsteadily. She begins sobbing, begging him not to leave her alone. Takuma tries to calm her down, promising he won't leave and urging her not to cry. He reluctantly begins helping her remove her clothing piece by piece. Takuma announces that he'll remove her skirt next, trying to figure out the fastening mechanism. As he works on it, Lishe giggles and complains that it tickles. Takuma apologizes while continuing his careful work. She thanks him sweetly, calling him a good boy. Takuma thinks to himself with relief that he somehow managed to remove her clothing while keeping himself blindfolded throughout the entire process, maintaining at least some sense of propriety. Lishe takes her bath while Takuma waits outside the bathing area, thinking firmly to himself that they really cannot allow this girl to drink alcohol ever again. He passes her some water through the screen. She thanks him gratefully and then begins speaking with unusual openness. She tells Takuma that he amazes her. When the two of them first met, he didn't look remotely like someone capable of fighting, yet now he faces down monsters and even challenges Forn directly. Beyond that, he actively trains with Rega to become even stronger. He responds with embarrassment, admitting that he didn't realize she had witnessed his training sessions. He downplays his efforts, explaining that, of course, he doesn't want to drag anyone down during their travels, but if he genuinely possesses the ability to become stronger, then naturally he wants to pursue that growth. He sees her personal desire to become stronger as equally valid and important. Takuma adds that he already thinks Lishe is quite strong in her own right. She responds that she feels happy hearing him think that way about her, but confesses that she's actually not skilled at magic whatsoever. In the Elf Kingdom, where magical ability represents everything, she has been considered a complete failure her entire life. He processes this new information, realizing this explains how the Elf Kingdom society functions and how they judge people's worth. Lishe continues, explaining that watching Takuma work so hard towards self-improvement inspired her to want to develop her own magical abilities further. She felt genuinely happy after successfully creating that large protective barrier earlier today. This entire journey has awakened a desire within her to grow as a person and become capable of helping the hero when they finally meet. Our dude acknowledges her feelings with understanding. Lishe adds with sudden enthusiasm that she also really enjoys attacking enemies with her flail weapon. Takuma thinks to himself that this preference actually comes across as quite intense and somewhat violent. Lishe elaborates that people outside the kingdom taught her that everyone possesses different skills and preferences, which opened her eyes to the world beyond her homeland's narrow perspective. Finding a weapon and fighting style that genuinely suits her personality has been an incredibly fun and liberating experience. Takuma connects this revelation to her obvious attachment to all her adventuring gear. She confirms enthusiastically that this is exactly why she values her equipment so much. Outside the bathroom, Forn stands quietly listening to their entire conversation. Lishe continues speaking, mentioning how she heard that knights exist to protect the king and all the citizens of the realm. They embody strength and reliability, qualities she deeply admires and aspires to develop herself. She announces suddenly that she's going to sleep now. Takuma wishes her a good night's rest. Lishe responds by suggesting they should exchange a goodnight kiss. Takuma reacts with immediate nervousness, insisting that she's definitely still drunk if she's making such suggestions. Hearing this exchange, Forn immediately starts running toward the room, shouting for Takuma to hold on because that's absolutely where he draws the line regarding his sister. Someone blocks Forn's path before he can burst into the room. Noel stands at the doorway and calmly explains that Takuma hadn't returned downstairs, so she came to check on Lishe's condition. She adds that if Lishe genuinely feels serious about her feelings, then Noel will support her decision completely. Inside the room, Takuma desperately tries to get Lishe to calm down, explaining that doing something like this while intoxicated qualifies as a terrible idea. Lishe insists through tears that she isn't drunk, and brings up the fact that he kissed Noel before. Takuma protests that the previous incident with Noel was merely an accidental slip-up, nothing more. He points out that Lishe herself looked like she didn't want to kiss him back during that moment they shared earlier. Lishe denies this interpretation emotionally, explaining that she wasn't reluctant. She was simply nervous and overwhelmed in that moment. Takuma processes this information, realizing that her reaction didn't stem from dislike but from anxiety. He mentally scolds himself to get his thoughts together and stop making incorrect assumptions. Lishe looks at him with completely innocent eyes and questions whether he doesn't want to kiss her. Takuma stumbles over his response, trying to explain that it's not exactly that he doesn't want to. Lishe expresses relief at hearing this and suddenly leans forward to kiss him directly. Just as their lips meet, the god appears in the room with a dramatic flourish, exclaiming with delight at the scene. The deity announces that Takuma has discovered another fated one even faster this time around, showing remarkable progress. The god examines the situation more closely, questioning which girl represents the fated one in this particular scenario. Lishe collapses against Takuma's chest, having fallen asleep mid-kiss. The god observes this development and notes with amusement that the fated one has fallen completely asleep. Takuma remains confused. The deity explains enthusiastically that Takuma found another destined partner on only his second attempt, which qualifies as genuinely amazing progress. The god admits with pride that they helped facilitate things quite a bit along the way, though they try to remain modest about their divine intervention. The god then makes a request. If Takuma could manage to marry a monster girl or a demon girl next, that would be absolutely wonderful and exciting. The deity mentions that Takuma remains connected to numerous potential partners through divine fate, so he should definitely keep up the excellent work. Takuma stands there completely baffled, trying to process what any of this actually means. As the god departs, Takuma carefully exits the room. Mao greets him with a warm welcome back. Noel immediately questions whether anything significant happened between him and Lishe during their time alone together. Takuma responds that nothing really occurred, trying to keep his voice casual. Noel repeats his answer with obvious skepticism and a teasing tone, clearly not believing him entirely. Takuma quickly apologizes to Mao for making her wait and suggests they head off to sleep. She agrees happily. He gently picks her up and carries her toward their sleeping quarters, wanting to ensure she rests comfortably. In a completely different location far from the capital, someone hands over a heavy bag of money to another person, instructing them to keep the change. The recipient apologizes for all the noise and commotion, explaining that they sent off a party for a knight's relative who will be traveling. The man receiving the money reflects internally on how ridiculous it seems to celebrate someone heading toward what might be their death. The man then stares at Mao's image with intensity. He whispers aloud in concern, questioning where Mao-sama has disappeared to. The morning begins with Takuma, Noel, and Mao observing Lishe and Forn as they walk together through the capital streets. Forn points out various shops he thinks his sister might enjoy visiting, his protective nature showing through his careful recommendations. Mao comments cheerfully on how well the siblings seem to be getting along, their bond clearly visible despite Forn's usual stern demeanor. Takuma agrees, noting the genuine warmth between them. Noel shifts her attention to our boy with a mischievous expression, questioning whether he enjoyed himself the previous night. Takuma reacts with immediate defensiveness, insisting loudly that absolutely nothing happened between him and Lishe. His internal thoughts reveal a different story. The alcohol seems to have completely erased Lishe's memory of their kiss and emotional conversation. He decides firmly to keep that particular secret to himself for now, seeing no reason to complicate matters by bringing it up. Mao innocently questions how Noel's matchmaking attempts went, curious about the outcome. Noel suddenly begins feeling unwell, her body swaying slightly, which causes immediate concern among the group. Takuma mentions that the drinks from the previous night were exceptionally strong, possibly explaining Noel's current discomfort. Mao also experienced some effects from the alcohol. Our boy turns to Noel and confirms that her main purpose for visiting the capital centers around shopping for rare items. Noel perks up at this reminder, explaining enthusiastically that the capital shops offer the absolute best selection and quality of goods anywhere in the kingdom. She suggests they forget about the previous night's awkward moments and focus entirely on their shopping expedition. Mao suddenly stands up with concern written across her face. Both Takuma and Mao notice her worried expression and turn their attention to what caught her eye. Lishe approaches Noel directly, reminding her that she promised to accompany them to the capital for their journey. The group plans to part ways after completing their shopping, which fills Lishe with visible sadness. She wraps Noel in a tight embrace, commenting on how adorable she finds her. Noel responds warmly, agreeing to travel with them for a bit longer than originally planned. She admits with practical honesty that she's nearly depleted her funds from excessive shopping and views Takuma as a potential source of income, so tagging along for a while longer makes financial sense. Lishe expresses genuine happiness at this decision, and Takuma echoes her sentiments about keeping their group together. Several days pass before the entire party finds themselves standing in the throne room of Vanvale Castle. The king addresses the group with important information. The prophesied savior currently travels toward the border town of Corral, and he wants Takuma's party to head there as well to meet up with this legendary figure. Lishe acknowledges the order with formal respect. Forn tells his sister to stay safe during her travels, and she responds by reminding him to keep protecting the capital in her absence. He promises to fulfill his duty, then addresses the entire group with a request to look after Lishe properly. Our boy expresses confusion about Forn's sudden change in attitude, pointing out that just recently the knight captain seemed to hate him intensely. Forn explains with surprising sincerity that maintaining composure while dealing with his airheaded sister requires nothing short of amazing patience and emotional control. He offers a deep apology for doubting Takuma's character and formally requests that he continue protecting Lishe from any evil they encounter during their journey. Noel's internal thoughts reveal a secret. She used a special sleeping dart on Forn the previous night, which probably left his memory somewhat hazy about the events that transpired. A man enters the throne room at that moment and provides additional information about their route. He mentions a village located along the way to Corral that worships dragons as sacred beings. Travelers and adventurers frequently stop there to pray for safe passage on their journeys, making it an ideal place to visit while en route to their destination. Takuma glances at the stranger and questions his identity. Noel observes the man's appearance and demeanor, concluding that he likely belongs to some religious cult based on his robes and manner of speaking. Takuma recalls that Lishe mentioned something about dragon worshippers before. The man continues his explanation, adding that if the group proves lucky, they might actually encounter a real dragon at this village. This revelation shocks everyone present. The possibility of meeting an actual dragon seems almost too incredible to believe. Noel expresses her amazement that dragons would actually descend to human settlements, as these legendary creatures remain extraordinarily rare throughout the world. She points out that most people consider themselves fortunate just to find a single dragon scale lying on the ground somewhere. Mao reacts with unbridled enthusiasm, bouncing excitedly as she declares how desperately she wants to meet a real dragon. She insists they absolutely must stop by this dragon village during their travels. The group agrees unanimously and begins preparing for their departure. They bid farewell to the castle and everyone within it, setting off on the next leg of their journey. Along the road, Mao spots some fresh fruit and purchases several pieces. She hands them to Lishe, recommending them as particularly tasty. A kind carriage driver approaches the group and offers them a ride to the village, which they gratefully accept. The journey passes relatively quickly, and they eventually make camp for the evening as darkness falls. Around the crackling fire, Takuma questions what kind of town Corral actually represents. Lishe explains that it functions as a bustling border town with significant trade and commerce flowing through it constantly. Takuma acknowledges this information while holding Mao on his shoulders to give her a better view of their surroundings. Mao mentions excitedly that just beyond their current road lies the dragon village. She admits feeling very excited about the prospect of finally seeing a real dragon up close. As they continue their approach, Takuma senses a crowd gathering ahead of them. When they investigate, they discover a significant problem. The bridge they need to cross has completely collapsed, leaving no safe way to proceed. One man in the crowd laments that everyone will need to take a substantial detour to reach Corral now, which creates a major problem for travelers on tight schedules. Noel examines the broken bridge carefully and confirms that they cannot proceed forward without finding an alternate route around the damaged structure. A voice suddenly demands that everyone pay a fee before moving along. The group turns toward the source of this command and spots a man with wings descending from the sky. He clarifies mockingly that the fee involves their lives rather than money. The gathered crowd reacts with terror, identifying the winged figure as a demon and shouting for everyone to run immediately. Mao observes the demon with curiosity, wondering internally how demons differ from the beasts they've encountered previously. The demon announces casually that running away proves pointless and merely annoys him, Someone from the panicked crowd grabs Noel's hand, urging her to flee with everyone else. Mao steps forward protectively, positioning herself in front of Takuma with her arms raised. She declares confidently that she believes she can defeat this opponent in combat. The demon acknowledges that Mao possesses decent mana reserves, giving her credit for at least having some power. He challenges her to test who proves stronger between them. Mao immediately frowns with determination and rushes forward to attack without hesitation. The demon dodges her assault easily, commenting that he's not stupid enough to take her attacks head-on. He changes direction and rushes toward Takuma instead, identifying him as the weaker target in the group. Takuma activates something instinctively, causing fire to spread in a protective circle around him. The demon questions whether this interruption will actually stop him, warning Takuma that he'd better run or he'll be eaten alive. Takuma feels genuine fear rising within him at this threat. Suddenly, an enormous dragon appears directly in front of him, its massive presence causing Takuma's fear to intensify dramatically. From her position at a distance, Lishe spots the dragon and shouts warnings about its arrival. The dragon fixes its attention on both Noel and Lishe, moving toward them with purpose. Before either woman can react, the dragon gently grasps both of them and carries them high into the air, leaving Takuma standing below in complete shock. He shouts in alarm, realizing they need to chase after the dragon immediately to rescue his companions. Mao responds to the emergency by lifting Takuma up in her arms. Takuma begins questioning what she plans to do, but before he can finish his thought, Mao throws him high into the air with tremendous force. She then begins running at full speed, building momentum before launching herself across the broken bridge in a single massive leap. She catches Takuma perfectly as he falls back toward the ground, their landing creating a small impact crater. Without missing a beat, Mao continues running while carrying Takuma in her arms. The other adventurers and travelers watch this entire sequence with absolute amazement, struggling to process what they just witnessed. They confirm among themselves that they definitely saw both a demon and a dragon appear, and that girl just displayed absolutely incredible strength and jumping power beyond human capability. Mao points ahead toward their destination, spotting the village in the distance. She expresses relief that they've finally arrived and suggests they immediately ask the villagers about Noel and Lishe's whereabouts. The village bustles with activity, numerous people engaged in various tasks and preparations. Takuma observes the lively atmosphere and realizes some kind of festival must be taking place, given the sheer number of people gathered here. Mao suddenly spots their missing companions and points excitedly in their direction. Lishe and Noel now wear completely different outfits, ceremonial robes that mark them as shrine maidens. Both women recognize Mao and Takuma approaching. Lishe expresses tremendous relief that both of them arrived safely at the village. Takuma finds his attention drawn to their unusual outfits, noting how different they look from their normal traveling clothes. An elderly villager approaches from behind and questions whether Takuma and Mao travel with the shrine maidens. Another bald villager joins the conversation, expressing gratitude that the shrine maidens arrived because their presence allows the ceremony to proceed without any problems. Mao reacts with confusion at hearing this term repeated. A third bearded man adds that Tenryu-sama will be extremely pleased with this development. Our main character feels completely lost about what these villagers mean by shrine maidens and ceremonies. Mao shares his confusion entirely. Lishe explains the situation to them. Apparently, the guardian dragon of this village laid an egg for the first time in 10 years, which represents an incredibly significant event. Noel adds that the village holds a special celebration ritual to honor this miraculous occurrence. Lishe continues, clarifying that the ritual requires a shrine maiden to perform properly, but the bridge leading to the village collapsed and prevented the assigned person from arriving on time. The elderly villager picks up the story, revealing that Tenryu-sama personally brought both Noel and Lishe to the village after discovering them near the broken bridge. The other bald villager expresses relief that the ritual can now proceed safely thanks to their unexpected arrival. Takuma expresses his amazement that a dragon actually chose the two of them specifically for this important role. Lishe admits that apparently the dragon simply took a strong liking to both of them for some reason. Noel explains that dragons possess very particular preferences. If a dragon doesn't like someone, it absolutely refuses to let them anywhere near its nest or eggs. Takuma acknowledges that while the bridge collapse created a disaster for travelers, at least something positive came from it. The elderly villager mentions with concern that they have no idea what actually caused the bridge to fail so completely. Lishe suggests the possibility that demons roaming the area lately might have caused the destruction deliberately. Noel questions whether this village has become a target for demon attacks. The main villager clarifies that the village itself faces no direct threat. The demons specifically target Tenryu-sama instead. The dragon's powerful mana allegedly grants immortality to anyone who consumes it, making it an extremely valuable prize for demons seeking such power. The demons have repeatedly attacked the dragon attempting to steal its mana, only to be defeated decisively each time they try. Takuma confirms with interest that dragons really do possess such incredible strength. He wonders aloud whether demons prove stronger than the beasts they have encountered during their travels. Noel provides crucial information about demons. They represent highly intelligent beasts capable of taking human form, making them extraordinarily dangerous opponents. Demons possess distinctive black skin and black horns that identify them clearly. The kingdom classifies them as S-rank threats, or even higher, placing them among the most dangerous creatures in existence. Takuma's thoughts return to their earlier encounter, realizing that the winged man they met at the bridge was almost certainly a demon based on Noel's description. Mao enthusiastically announces that she wants to become a shrine maiden too, because she desperately wants to meet the dragon personally. The villager responds with unfortunate news. Tenryu-sama doesn't like men or children at all, so both Takuma and Mao will need to wait at the inn during the ceremony. This revelation leaves both of them visibly shocked and disappointed. The village continues its preparations as children run through the streets excitedly, calling Tenryu incredibly cool and expressing their desire to see a real dragon up close. Mao sits with a deeply sad expression, her earlier enthusiasm completely deflated by the news that she cannot participate. Takuma approaches her gently and encourages her to cheer up, promising they'll enjoy the festival together even if they can't see the dragon directly. The elderly villager guides them to an inn, requesting that they use these accommodations during the ceremony. Mao thanks him quietly but admits she no longer feels interested in attending the festival at all. Takuma notices a picture hanging on the wall and questions what it represents. The villager explains that it depicts an ancient dragon legend passed down through generations in this village. A noise interrupts their conversation. A girl stands nearby looking completely naked except for an outfit clutched in her hands, her face displaying absolute gloom and confusion. She admits with embarrassment that she has no idea how to wear this ceremonial outfit properly. Mao immediately moves to cover Takuma's eyes, protecting him from the awkward sight. The elderly villager reacts with flustered embarrassment, quickly ushering the girl away while promising to call someone who can help her dress appropriately. He apologizes profusely to Takuma, explaining that they did ask someone to serve as a shrine maiden for the ceremony. Mao comments sympathetically that she understands the feeling completely, having owned outfits in the past that she couldn't figure out how to wear properly either. Meanwhile, Noel and Lishe climb stairs leading to an elevated area where Tenryu-sama currently resides. Lishe carries a ceremonial offering, announcing that they've brought sake for the dragon. Noel mentions apologetically that she'll only request a single scale as a memento of their meeting. The dragon responds with what seems like gratitude, then turns its attention to the nest containing its precious egg. Noel and Lishe watch with delight as the egg moves slightly. The dragon carefully picks up the egg with its mouth, cradling it protectively. Lishe expresses her happiness at seeing the dragon so content, hoping sincerely that the egg hatches safely and produces a healthy baby dragon. Noel comments that meeting a real dragon feels like receiving a genuine blessing from the heavens. She plans to brag about this incredible experience to her grandfather when she returns home. Outside the ceremonial area, Mao licks a lollipop while mentioning something the village children told her. Tenryu sometimes visits the village directly to play with the residents, showing a surprisingly friendly side. Takuma responds hopefully that maybe the dragon will come again while they're still staying here, though internally he feels somewhat scared at the prospect of meeting such a massive creature face to face. Mao expresses her genuine desire to meet the dragon again, despite being excluded from the ceremony. A sudden noise comes from a nearby door, drawing their attention. They approach cautiously, and Takuma identifies the sound as coming from behind this particular entrance. Mao reaches the door and calls out, questioning whether someone might be playing hide-and-seek inside. A desperate voice responds from within, crying out for help. They quickly open the door and discover a girl with a gloomy expression tied up with thick ropes, unable to move. Mao and Takuma work together to untie her bonds. Takuma recognizes her as the shrine maiden lady they saw earlier struggling with her outfit. He questions urgently why she's locked in this room. The girl reveals shocking information. A demon captured her and locked her inside the storage area. The demons are currently pretending to be her and have already headed to the ceremony in her place. This revelation hits Takuma and Mao like a thunderbolt. The girl who accompanied Noel and Lishe to the dragon wasn't the real shrine maiden at all. She was a demon in disguise. Takuma's mind races as he processes the shocking revelation. The girl who was supposed to serve as the shrine maiden in the ritual now sits tied up in this storage room. The real shrine maiden explains frantically that a demon disguised itself as her and is already headed to the ceremony. The demon likely threatened her until she revealed every detail about the ritual and its procedures. Mao reacts with immediate alarm, realizing the ceremony has already begun, and they need to rush there immediately to prevent disaster. At the ritual site, Tenryu suddenly raises a bowl and begins panting heavily, his breathing labored and unnatural. The dramatic change in the dragon's condition shocks both Noel and Lishe completely. Tenryu's state rapidly worsens right before their eyes, his massive body beginning to tremble. The disguised shrine maiden watches this development with satisfaction and announces that the poison is finally taking effect as intended. The elderly villager reacts with horror and disbelief, demanding to know why anyone would poison the sacred sake offered to their guardian dragon. The fake maiden transforms back into her true demonic form, revealing black skin and curved horns. She explains with cold satisfaction that poisoning the dragon serves an obvious purpose. She plans to consume him and evolve into a higher-class demon through absorbing his powerful mana. Lishe recognizes the demon immediately as the same one they encountered at the broken bridge earlier. The demon lands gracefully on the floor and elaborates on her scheme. The villagers became so caught up in preparing their precious ritual that they left their defenses completely open. She complains that dragons possess weird tastes, particularly their fondness for alcohol and women, which made infiltrating the ceremony relatively simple. The demon grumbles that because of Tenryu's protective presence, she hasn't been able to eat any humans in the surrounding area, making this whole operation far more troublesome than anticipated. She warns that if the dragon doesn't taste delicious after all this effort, she'll be extremely upset. Tenryu growls weakly, his strength rapidly fading. Lishe leaps toward the demon, declaring that she won't allow this atrocity to happen. The demon responds with complete indifference, effortlessly moving to a different position. She grabs onto a massive cliff edge nearby and threatens that one slip of her grip will send the entire cliff crashing down onto the village below, endangering countless innocent lives. Lishe shouts in alarm at this threat. The demon clarifies her position coldly. She genuinely doesn't care about the village or its residents at all. As long as she can consume the dragon, she'll refrain from causing any additional destruction, provided nobody interferes with her meal. She points directly at Noel and instructs Lishe to stay back. Lishe freezes, unwilling to risk the village's safety. The demon's attention shifts to the dragon's nest, observing the egg with newfound interest. She notes that the egg appears bonded with accumulated mana, making it a valuable prize worth taking as well. At that moment, Tenryu summons his remaining strength and creates a massive fireball around his body. The demon jumps away quickly to escape the flames, shocked that the poisoned dragon can still move and fight back. Tenryu releases a devastating attack directly toward the demon, catching her completely off guard. The blast sends the demon flying backward, and she crashes hard against the ground. She expresses disbelief, insisting that the poison she used kills magical beasts instantly without fail. Tenryu opens his mouth and vomits violently before collapsing onto the ground, his massive body finally succumbing to the toxin's effects. The demon struggles to her feet, cursing what a troublesome creature the dragon proved to be. She demands that everyone just die already and releases poisonous breath from her mouth directly toward Noel and Lishe. The toxic cloud rushes toward them with lethal intent. Suddenly, Takuma's voice rings out from above, shouting for Mao to throw him in front of everyone. Mao responds instantly, hurling Takuma through the air with tremendous force. He positions himself to fall directly above Noel and Lishe, then shouts for Pio-chan to blow the demon away. The demon reacts with confusion and frustration, demanding to know what's happening as a powerful gust of wind strikes her. At that exact moment, Mao appears behind the demon and delivers a crushing physical attack. Tenryu watches this sudden intervention with confusion despite his weakened state. Takuma shouts about falling as gravity pulls him downward toward his companions. Lishe positions herself to catch him, but Noel immediately protests, urging everyone to calm down and think about the physics of the situation. Takuma crashes into both women, and a small explosion of dust and debris erupts from the impact. The collision leaves both Noel and Lishe partially undressed from the force. Mao checks on everyone frantically, making sure nobody sustained serious injuries. The chaotic moment gets interrupted as everyone notices Tenryu, beginning to glow with an intense light. The demon also recovers from Mao's attack, rising to her feet and declaring her intention to kill everyone present. Her threat gets cut short as Tenryu roars with unexpected power, leaving the demon shocked and confused about why the dragon appears completely healthy now despite the poison. Tenryu creates an enormously powerful blast of energy from his mouth and releases it directly toward the demon. Mao watches with admiration, praising how incredibly strong the dragon has become. Lishe expresses amazement at the display of raw power. Noel questions with confusion how Tenryu already purged the poison from his system when it should have been lethal. The elderly villager suddenly shouts in alarm, drawing everyone's attention to the egg. The precious dragon egg has fallen onto the ground and now trembles violently. The old man realizes with horror that the egg must have absorbed some of the poison during the chaos. Noel identifies the type of toxin affecting the egg. It specifically targets magical beasts, making this situation extremely dangerous. She admits with frustration that she doesn't have any antidote available, and even if she did, the medicine likely wouldn't work on an unhatched egg anyway. The elderly villager suggests desperately that they need to rush the egg to the village immediately and have their healers examine it. Mao volunteers to fly the egg straight to the village herself, promising to deliver it safely. The group reacts with surprise at this offer, not fully understanding her capabilities. Tenryu approaches the egg with obvious concern, but Mao stops him gently. She explains that the egg will receive examination right away, but first she needs Tenryu to endure his pain just a bit longer. Takuma reaches out and places his hands on the egg as Mao holds it steady. The black discoloration covering the egg's surface begins to vanish gradually, replaced by a clean white glow that radiates health and vitality. Mao expresses wonder at the transformation happening right before her eyes. Takuma questions whether this means the egg has been healed completely. Tenryu watches with tears forming in his massive eyes, then presses his face against the egg with overwhelming love and relief. The scene shifts to later that same day. Mao rides on Tenryu's back as the great dragon soars through the sky high above the village. She expresses pure joy at this incredible experience, shouting Takuma's name excitedly from her elevated position. Below them, Takuma lies exhausted on the ground, completely drained. Mao comments on how Mao always seems to maintain such boundless energy no matter what happens. Noel and Lishe observe from a distance. Noel turns to Lishe with curiosity, questioning whether Takuma always ends up in this exhausted state after using his mysterious ability. Lishe considers the question carefully, recalling that he did seem somewhat tired before. She remembers specifically that he cured paralysis just by touching someone during their previous adventures. Noel reacts with shock, pointing out that he accomplished healing without any tools or magical implements. She theorizes that he might actually be a healer on top of being an enchanter or buffer, though the combination doesn't make any logical sense according to established magical theory. Takuma lies on the ground near the egg, curiosity getting the better of his exhaustion. He reaches out and touches the smooth surface gently, admitting that he just wanted to confirm the egg is truly okay now. He expresses hope that he'll grow big enough someday to ride on the baby dragon's back when it hatches. As his hand rests against the shell, he feels something moving inside, a subtle shift of life responding to his touch. Takuma smiles, glad that the baby dragon survived this ordeal. Inside the egg, the unborn dragon expresses gratitude toward its savior in its own way. The following morning arrives in the village. Lishe speaks with the elderly villager, confirming that the prophesied savior didn't stop by this village, but continued onward toward their destination. The old man expresses surprise at learning that Lishe's group travels as companions to the savior. He apologizes sincerely for trying to hold them back with the ritual and ceremony. Lishe dismisses his concern warmly, explaining that she genuinely wanted to meet the dragon anyway. She means Tenryu-sama, of course. Noel beams with happiness as she holds up some rare materials, mentioning these gifts from the grateful villagers. She thanks them graciously for the valuable items. Takuma reflects on what a great experience this entire adventure has been. Mao adds excitedly that she even got to ride on Tenryu's back, which fulfilled a dream she's held for years. The elderly villager extends a warm invitation for them to visit again whenever they travel through this region. At that moment, Tenryu arrives suddenly and lands in the center of the village, his massive form creating quite a spectacle. Everyone reacts with shock and excitement that he chose to come down to the village personally. The children especially find this incredibly cool. Tenryu approaches Mao directly and she greets him happily, thrilled that he came to see them off before their departure. She wishes him well and promises they'll meet again someday. The dragon then nudges Takuma's face gently with his snout. Takuma questions what's happening, confused by this behavior. Tenryu opens his mouth and carefully deposits an egg into Takuma's hands. Takuma stares at the dragon egg in complete bewilderment, struggling to understand why Tenryu is giving this to him. The dragon takes flight immediately after making his delivery, leaving no opportunity for questions or discussion. Takuma watches the dragon disappear into the distance, questioning why Tenryu entrusted this precious egg to their care. The elderly villager explains that the dragon clearly feels safe leaving the egg in their capable hands after witnessing how Takuma saved the other egg from poison. Takuma protests that dragon eggs hold immense value and should probably be raised here in the village where they belong. He points out that the villagers would certainly love to raise another dragon among them. A voice suddenly emanates from within the egg itself, interrupting the conversation. Everyone's attention snaps to this unexpected development. Mao wonders aloud whether the egg actually wants to journey with them, rather than stay in the village. They all focus intently, attempting to communicate with the consciousness inside the egg. The bald villager steps forward and explains that he's placed the egg in a special mana-protected pouch that will keep it safe from all physical impacts during their travels. Our guy questions when the egg might actually hatch. Mao bounces with excitement at the prospect of a new companion. The bald villager observes the egg's activity and notes how lively it seems, predicting that hatching probably won't take very long now. Mao expresses her enthusiasm about looking forward to this journey together with their future dragon companion. The shrine maiden suddenly appears, approaching the group with a bright greeting. Everyone turns their attention toward her. She introduces herself properly as Sophia and thanks them profusely for saving her life from the demon's captivity. Mao brushes off the thanks modestly, pointing out that everything worked out fine and everyone remains safe. Noel and Lishe also approach Sophia to check on her well-being. Sophia mentions that she actually lives in the city of Corral, which lies ahead on their route. Lishe reacts with pleasant surprise, mentioning that their group heads to Corral as well. Noel stands behind Lishe and suggests they share the complete story of what happened during the ritual. Sophia expresses delight at this coincidence and proposes that they all travel together to Corral. She admits with vulnerable honesty that after everything that happened, she feels genuinely scared of traveling alone and would appreciate the company. Our dude acknowledges that traveling alone can prove quite dangerous. Mao enthusiastically agrees that they should journey together. Sophia moves closer to Takuma, expressing happiness at his acceptance. Her eyes reveal something deeper than simple gratitude as she gazes at him with obvious affection.
Here I am, know it's been a while. I was in denial about my love. Here I stand, I know I walked away.